Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Zach.
and for the 100th time, welcome to the Movie Vault. It's been quite a journey, but I won't get too sentimental, and we'll get straight into the episode.
I hope that
Today-
you start crying at least twice.
I don't know that I'm gonna cry, but it is pretty crazy. Did you, Zach? When we started, did you think we'd get to 100?
Yeah, of course.
I think once you get past like 10, then you're kind of locked in to get to at least 100.
Yeah, maybe.
There was one podcast I followed a long time ago that I liked. Maybe it was one of the first podcasts I really got into, and it ended at 100 episodes. I think it kind of just like ran out of steam. Like
Well-
it kind of had its moment. It like peaked in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then kind of went down, and the people kind of split directions.
Well, we haven't peaked yet.
No, I mean, I hope we haven't peaked yet. Well, if we have peaked, what would our peak even be?
That's not a peak. That's like a little, what do you call it? Like just a speed bump? Yeah, we haven't peaked. So the great thing about being so low is you can only go up.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I think about is when we started this, we were so young, and we're still not that old. So a lot of respect that's gained in being like a critic of any kind is like maturity. So the more you mature, the more I think actually people like respect your opinion. Because when was Roger Ebert the most popular? I mean, when he was about to die, probably.
After his cancer.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
you could look back on his whole history of like all of the stuff that he had done, and then like, wow, this guy really knows a lot about movies, so I can really like respect his opinion.
Really, we're just cataloging our ideas so that we can say that we've done some things.
Yeah.
Basically, building a portfolio.
It's like a vocal journal, kind
Yeah.
of, in
It
a
is.
sense.
It's like an archive of our thoughts.
It was funny. I was re-listening to our first episode, and there was a lot of like awkward moments. I think one time you said coitus, and I can't remember what else happened. That stuck out to me though. That stuck out to me. But there was a few moments where I was like, wow, we said some really like there were some thoughts there that were actually meant something, you know. We were like a little scared to talk about things too. Like I think now I'm a little bit more free with like the topics that were discussed. We were trying to like dance around things in the beginning, but now when I started, I never thought I was like, we'll just have to never review Taxi Driver. But right now I feel like I'd be able to review Taxi Driver and be like comfortable doing it, and it wouldn't feel weird. But at the beginning, I think it did.
Why would it have felt weird?
I don't know. I wasn't mature enough to like know how to talk about a movie like that. We still haven't reviewed it though, so.
We started with the B movie and we made our way up.
Yeah, I mean, we started with Good Time, which was kind of, I mean, it is an R-rated movie, and that did have some like weird stuff, like the underage girl making out with Robert Pattinson. That was like the first episode.
Is that when I brought in coitus?
Yeah, you said they didn't have coitus or something like that.
Oh, so
Which
they
was,
didn't.
Like, that was the first episode. We had something like that immediately, so it was good. We jumped right in 12 feet deep into having to talk about controversial subject matter.
In honor of 100 episodes, I'll bring back the coitus somewhere in this episode.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as the 100th, we thought it would be fitting to do something grand, as we did for our 50th anniversary, which was Infinity War and Endgame, kind of the groundbreaking blockbuster films that came out in 2018 and 2019, respectively. So this is the 1977, 1980, and 1983, right?
Yep.
Trilogy of Star Wars. Obviously, probably the biggest franchise of all time to ever have existed. Maybe the biggest movies of all time, arguably. I don't know what could compete. But anyway, they were groundbreaking at their time, so it's obviously Star Wars was called Star Wars at the time. It's been rebranded as A New Hope, which then came Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi, in that order. So we have just kind of gone through. We actually just finished Return of the Jedi together.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do all three films in this episode. So if you've already seen the runtime, then you know that it's probably a little bit longer than normal. So we'll also kind of just go into the whole Star Wars ethos and kind of the surrounding themes and shows and movies that kind of surround this really, really, really expansive franchise. And we'll kind of go into how it came to be a little bit and its effect on things and just the rise and fall. Because it really is, it fluctuates.
Yeah, it definitely does.
So
I think one of the things that I try to do going into rewatching these, and really, I think on the scale of things, I probably have only seen all the Star Wars movies like a couple times. Some people have probably seen them, 40, 50, 60 times in their life because they're just on all the time. I had kind of a different background. Didn't really watch them as much as a little kid. Kind of followed read the books and stuff. Not the books like the novels, just like facts about Star Wars. It was like something I was always drawn to. So it was like a weird order to do things in. I think I did watch like the first one when I was like 6, and then it took me a while to watch the next two. Watch them. So I maybe am like nostalgic for Star Wars in like a weird different way than other people, but have always liked it. But this time I tried to go in and not think about it. Just think about it as these 3 movies isolated, and try as little to think about the prequels or the sequels, and just think of it like I was watching it for the first time in the 1970s and 80s. And that's a cool way to watch it if you can somehow turn your brain off. I mean, every once in a while it references something and you think of the prequels, especially.
Well, we had said this as we were watching it, but
yeah.
There was just like a one shot of this random robot in the background, and we're like, there's probably a book about that.
Yeah, that's true.
He probably has a children and a wife and just a whole backstory. He probably committed some crimes to get there and has a sad story that led up to that. But none of us really care or know. If we just watched these 3 films, which we just did, I enjoyed it so much better than when I was thinking about the expansive universe. Like watching these new shows and everything, it just adds too many layers of, I don't know. It's too connected, and it kind of cheapens it a little bit. So watching these 3, and it's hard to watch it like you said, as if we were in 1977.
Yeah,
that's kind of hard to do. But we tried our best to try to simulate going back and just the pure Star Wars original trilogy. And we'll see kind of how our thoughts have changed on these films as we go along. But this might have been the most I've enjoyed watching these films this time around.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I watched them, and I also really enjoyed rewatching them. So Star Wars started, it has a long history from before, but you have to go back to George Lucas, and if you watch American Graffiti, you're like, oh yeah, of course that's the guy who's going to make the most revolutionary science fiction movie of all time. Not really. When I watched American Graffiti, I was kind of like, wow, this is way different than Star Wars. So obviously it was a passion of his, and you could probably read like books on exactly how he developed. I guess according to Wikipedia, he had the idea in 1971, so that was like 6 years, and it was very inspired by Flash Gordon, the space adventure comics. He also had a short film called THX 1138 that I haven't watched, but I've seen it's on Canopy and stuff, so you can watch it pretty easily. But I think this kind of planted the idea in his head. Also, if you look up who he was influenced by, the name Akira Kurosawa comes up like so many times. Of course, Yojimbo, which we are going to have to review because it seems like it influences every movie. Mm-hmm. And then Seven Samurai and a couple of other of Akira Kurosawa's movie. And you can kind of see the like samurai undertones in Star Wars, especially with the lightsabers. And then it's like he pulls aspects of Eastern mysticism and maybe Westerns a little bit, which Westerns and samurai movies are also kind of interconnected because what were Westerns inspired by? Akira Kurosawa. So or a lot of them were. The John Ford's The Searchers was another movie that came up. So there's all these sorts of things, as opposed to some other fantasy. I think one of my friends was talking to me about Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings was like very based on like Norse and maybe Celtic or Irish mythologies, like ancient mythologies, and then like Tolkien's obsession with creating a language and then making a world for that language. So it wasn't and it was made to be a book. So I think Star Wars is unique in that it's like a purely movie inspired fantasy world.
Yeah,
maybe
actually,
the first one.
Akira Kurosawa really influenced most of this film, if you think about it. I was looking into kind of like, I was just curious what inspired C-3PO and R2-D2, and the first thing that came up is Akira Kurosawa's 1958 film The Hidden Fortress, and there's these two sidekicks called Tahi and Maratsushi, and they represent the two comedic reliefs of the film. One of them's tall, one of them's shorter. The shorter one's a little bit sassier, the tall one's a little bit annoying. So it just really got into that the personalities of these droids, and I think a lot of stealing the best elements from those films made this film, the aura of it, just amazing.
And it's actually brilliant too, because for most people at this time, I'm guessing the average person wouldn't know who Akira Kurosawa was at this point in time. And I say that pretty confidently because I would venture to say the average person today doesn't know who Akira Kurosawa is. I mean, maybe his movies are a little bit more known or easily accessible to everyone because of the internet. But it's not like people are going out and watching. Maybe Seven Samurai got a little bit of popularity, but most of his movies weren't like being widely played in American theaters. So Lucas kind of had this like secret weapon of like pulling this influence, because it was like this huge audience in America that was just like looking for this. They didn't know it, and Lucas showed it to him in his sort of, I hate to say it, Tarantino-esque way of like recycling.
You just had to.
Even though Tarantino came post this, but I had to. I mean, it's the 100th episode, so we have to say the QT word.
Sure. Some other influences include Flash Gordon, John Cater from Mars series, obviously Japanese samurai films, including Kurosawa's films, but among others. Dune, a lot of that was influenced what Tatooine came out to be. The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, those books actually influenced the story arcs of some of these films, just in the way that they structured them and the heroes kind of coming together, having this band of brothers that fights a group of bad guys that have flaws. Just some of those elements were included, it says. And The Hero with 1,000 Faces, actually by Joseph Campbell, also had a few influences on these things. So it really was a combination of Eastern religions and real-world history of samurai and westerns and actual religions and stuff like that combining together to create this space drama, really, with these space wizards that have these lightsaber things that fight and try to balance this force that is beyond them and above them, that goes yin-yang, really, light and dark. And both are powerful sides, and they kind of tug at each other constantly, and the balance is never the same, right? It always fluctuates. So a lot of that is influenced by, old Chinese, Eastern, and Japanese religions. Knights Templar is another big influence as well, just kind of with this band of Jedi Knights that have this code that they stand by and they try to recruit as well. And the training is only for certain people, and there really is a small group that kind of are these peace warriors that live by this strict moral code and are not necessarily fighters in this case. They have their lightsabers strictly for defense, as though, well, many do break it in the cycle, and we can get into that. But so Star Wars is this big amalgamation, somehow works in these films. Why do we think that Star Wars worked?
I think it's one thing to say, oh, this is a lot of good ideas, but you still have to put them all together. And I think a real big reason why it succeeded is because of Lucas's company, Industrial Light and Magic. So a huge aspect of Star Wars popularity was the effects. And you can see why, because even when you look back at them now, trying to parse out, you can kind of tell which ones are the remastered CGI add-ins, but there's still a lot of like the practical effects are showcased, and I think that was a really big reason why. The only other movie I can think of that was kind of like Star Wars was 2001: A Space Odyssey, which did come out like 9 years before Star Wars, but it didn't have the plot or the characters that really would engage with most people in an audience. It was much more ambiguous, perhaps a bit more philosophical, and just not made to be played to a 10-year-old kid, and for it to be engaging to them. So Star Wars had the plot and the characters of a movie that is engaging to people of most ages, from like maybe like 6 or 7 up, and then it also had that amazing technology and gave people the feeling that they were like in space, and it was an adventure film, and just had all of these things that people like. And then to your point, like C-3PO and R2-D2 having characters like that are like comic relief sidekick. It has that kind of like self-aware feeling to it that like we know this is like a little bit cheesy in parts, but we're like leaning into it. And you almost have to when you have practical effects, because you almost have to acknowledge that sometimes they just don't look real, but if you acknowledge that to an extent and are okay with it, people kind of like buy into the world. So I think promoting that buy-in and then ultimately having a good plot, which I think it's not a very complicated plot. Would you agree?
No, and that goes to its
it's literally
advantage.
good versus evil.
Yes.
They tell you who good is and they tell you who evil is, and they talk about that. They're like, I'm on the light side, I'm on the dark side. It's like really obvious who you're rooting for and who you're rooting against. You get the sort of anti-hero with Han Solo, the more rugged, like criminal guy. There's like politics and there's all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like a relatively simple plot. And like you said earlier, it's like two plots converging. And I'm not sure how much he had planned. I think he had kind of the plots for all three of the films planned somewhat, but I'm sure they kind of changed things as they went on through 5 and 6. But
Yeah.
especially once 5 and 6 come on, it seemed like they kind of knew what they were doing, because 5 didn't end on a like that. 5 ended more like that there's another one coming, whereas they could have just had the first Star Wars and not had the second one. But.
Yeah, Infinity War is often equated as the Empire Strikes Back of the Avengers films,
Yeah,
which makes sense because it's a cliffhanger-esque style. I think what works for Star Wars is, like you said, the simplicity of it. And not only that, but just the character arcs in general are kind of the hero's journey. And we talked about this a lot over the last 100 episodes, how people are drawn to this hero's journey where you have a good guy and he's fighting a bad guy. And it's simple, right? The complexities come with it. I don't know why I say it like that. I say that all the time, complexities. They come with the story, right? The more nitty-gritty you get into each story arc, the more details that fill in. But the overarching story is clear. The mission is clear. The mechanics can be explained in different ways, and different space elements can be put in there as well. But Luke is Luke, and Darth Vader is Darth Vader. That familial aspect of it as well, the fact that he is his father. And by the way, the line is, "No, I am your father," and that's not Luke, "I am your father."
Yeah, people mess up because they want to say it like isolated, and it doesn't make as much sense because he's saying no to something that Luke says.
Yeah,
but you're right.
That fatherly element of it really can come home to anyone, because everyone has a father, right?
And a lot of people have fathers who are like more like Darth Vader than they are like Ben Kenobi,
Sure.
right? Where they did things, and it's like they have that aspect of like, I know this person's bad, and they did things that like hurt me, but I still want to love them, like, because they're my father. So that definitely added a new element, and it's kind of crazy. That's where you kind of miss it, because like it was never a twist to any of us that Darth Vader was. We saw it in Toy Story. Like, you just know it's gonna like.
Because Zurg says it to.
Yeah, because Zurg says it to
Buzz.
Yeah, so from the moment you're like 2 years old and watching Toy Story, you know the plot twist in Star Wars, but it still is. I finished 5 today, and I was like, wow, that's still a really powerful moment where he's like, he doesn't want it to be true, but he knows it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just that element where it really is this giant space battle that's occurring, but it's familial, it's personal. And you have these characters that genuinely love each other and they care about each other, and they're sassy, yeah, but they kind of band together when things get serious. So I think all of those elements really played into it well. They did not overshadow the characters with a plot, and I think that's what has been the downfall of a lot of the sequels and the prequels as well, where they're fitting on all the plot to try to fill in the details of what was missed in the original trilogy. And there were things missed, but the characters themselves and their storylines and the story arcs make a lot less sense. But in these films, the story arcs are very clear. They're at the forefront and they are simple.
Yeah.
So I think that those were some of the main things that worked. The practical effects, we can't even imagine what it was like to be there back then in the theater watching this. Having never seen anything like this before, and now it's on the screen, I'm sure people were going crazy in the theater.
If Star Trek, I don't know when the first Star Trek episode came out, but I think it was a little bit before Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
But if you compare those effects to this, it was like it's like night and day. It's crazy what they did with this movie. I mean, the Death Star, anything that's in space is always like still looks pretty realistic because of the miniatures and stuff that they used. And it just gives the sense of awe and wonderment. And people are just curious about the unknown void of space. And it's kind of cool to imagine it being this like, well, they don't mention Earth. They don't bring Earth into it at all. I mean, you presume that it exists in this universe, but it's like so far away. But it says a galaxy far, far away. So it's like a completely different galaxy that we're not even close to at all. And you're like sitting there thinking, what if this was real? Like, what if in a galaxy far, far away, there are like space battles and stuff going on right now?
Well, if it's far, far away, there must be some reference point. And it must be us.
Yeah. So we're the reference point. So they're saying we exist.
And it also says that it's a long time ago. So we don't
true.
have to worry about it.
It totally messes up any reality of us being there.
Even though they are way more advanced than we'll ever be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Star Wars itself has become a legendary franchise just because of the way that it kind of shaped culture and the way that it took people by surprise, and almost everyone has become a fan since then, right? The human race has really put their cards in all of their the eggs in one basket in this Star Wars franchise. There aren't really any other big franchises that have caught up to it up until the last maybe 10 years with the Avengers franchise. And at some points, Harry Potter and other movies that have spiked up for a little bit. But consistently, there has been nothing, absolutely nothing, that has created as much excitement, as many nerds, or as many, Comic-Con brawls than Star Wars has.
Yeah, and part of it's because, at least nowadays, like we said about every character getting their own book, it's such a huge universe. There's endless amounts of things you could possibly do with the Star Wars universe, which is why it was never realistic that they were just going to be one movie. That was never going to happen, and I don't think that even should have happened. It was probably never realistic that there were just going to be 3 movies. So you can complain all you want about like the sequels and the prequels and wonder whether it diminishes the original story, but it was probably going to happen in some form, some way. So it's kind of like just enjoy it for what it is, and people have enjoyed like the Clone Wars TV shows and like all kinds of things that they've done to add on to the history. Now, of course, with all the different writers and team directors and all this stuff, like it's never going to be actually consistent. Like I think some people get frustrated because it's not consistent. But how are you going to make something this vast truly consistent? Because human error, and then you're going to like go back on things, and there's going to be debates, but that's part of the fun too. Like it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't for that.
And maybe this is our first disagreement.
Really?
Just because I think if you're going to take some time to make a TV show, right? If you're given the responsibility to fill in gaps in a timeline in a universe like this, I think you should know your source material well.
You're right. I mean, I think you should try your best.
There's always human error.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't upset the fans as much as it does. But the amount of plot holes in this franchise, I'm not talking about plot holes. I'm talking about inconsistencies. Sorry. Yeah. Plot holes I'm okay with. It's a space drama. But the sequels, even
the actual inconsistency with how things work.
Even in the last few years, it has been, even in like the sequels, just so inconsistent from the original
sequels aren't
films.
Even consistent with each other, I don't think.
Yeah,
is the problem. But not to go too far into the sequels yet.
But it got very political. We can get into that too.
I mean, it did get political, maybe more political than Star Wars, which is it was political in a sense that there was an empire and a republic, but it was pretty general.
Well, yeah.
Of any.
Well, I'm saying it got political because it got all like Disney has to live up to expectations and
because
all that
Disney
stuff.
bought it.
Yeah,
and that's another thing. And the interesting thing, I'm reading more about the history here, and they said Disney didn't want it, so he pursued Disney originally. They didn't want it, so he went to 20th Century Fox, and they completed a deal in 1973. Lucas directed American Graffiti. That got good reception, and so he leveraged that to get more money for Star Wars. Star Wars was originally supposed to be an $8 million project, and it turned out to be 10. Really not a huge budget. So that's another thing about Star Wars is that, again, we've talked about this over and over again on 100 episodes that we've done. You don't have to have a big budget to make a good movie.
Reservoir Dogs, perfect example.
And you don't have you don't have to have a huge budget to make an amazing movie that is appealing to a wide audience. Because I get some people would say, yeah, you can make small budget movies, but they're not going to appeal to as many people. Like, you're going to have a smaller audience that's going to latch onto it, like Reservoir Dogs, for example. But you're not taking your 5-year-old to go see Reservoir Dogs. But Star Wars, I'm sure it's more than $8 million in counting for inflation, but still relatively low budget, and just incredible results in terms of getting people to come out and watch it and get engaged with it. $11 million it says on here. $800 million box office, which is probably adjusted for inflation well over $1 billion. I mean, that's an insane return on investment. That's crazy. And I don't know what they're factoring into that amount, like whether they factored in. I think it said box office, so I assume it's just the box office from like the initial release. But
plus toys,
plus all the toys. I mean, the revenue outside of the box office is insane.
It probably matches the box office.
It probably matches the box office, if not more.
Sure.
Like
especially in the last few decades.
Yeah.
Where Disney has pumped out all these toys.
I mean, just Lego and Star Wars together. That's a tandem.
It really has become a pillar of our culture.
Yeah.
Like, there isn't anyone who walks down the street and sees a Darth Vader and is freaked out.
No.
Right? Which is weird.
Yes,
right?
That's kind of weird.
We go back to the 1920s and someone walks around in a Darth Vader outfit. People are freaked out. They think he's a killer or death is knocking on their door. But the thing about Star Wars that I kind of want to talk about was there is this element that kind of tickles the imagination. And there are some of these crazy things. The creativity that is happening in these stories is just off the charts. I can't even imagine some of these things that are happening in there. I mean, just the aliens, the fights, the idea of the Force, although they're derived from other things, the way that they work well together is what made Star Wars in my opinion. So I'm just thinking of like specific scenes like the Hoth battle. Like, you have these AT-ATs on all fours kind of just running into battle against the rebel base on Hoth. And just the idea of like grappling around the legs and tripping it, stuff like that, or the Ewoks, letting the logs kind of crush the head of the AT-ST thing. Just like the mechanics of it and the imagination that comes into this to this franchise, really, specifically in the original trilogy, we'll get into the loss of imagination later on, is amazing. Just because George Lucas, his source material, whatever he's working from, he took the best parts of it and made it into a magical experience. So if I were sitting in that seat in 1977, I would be amazed just because of like how cool these elements work together. We're in space. We're also on different planets. Like, the world building is amazing too. We're seeing all these different kinds of aliens that I've never seen a head shaped like that before. I've never heard an alien language like that before. Just the newness of it and the weirdness of it makes it seem magical, otherworldly, like you're not actually on Earth anymore, right? So it's among many other reasons why Star Wars is Star Wars. But I want to know, Ben, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
For a while I said Episode 7, but after watching this, it's definitely Episode 5.
Episode 7. Explain why your initial.
Well, okay, so when I saw Star Wars Episode 7 in theaters, it was an amazing experience.
I'm glad you had a good time.
It was like it meant a lot to like be seeing a new Star Wars movie. And honestly, I had a great theater experience for Episode 8 too, and I loved Episode 8. I still do, but the only thing I'll say about Episode 8 and all the controversy and stuff is that I've still only seen it that one time I saw it in theaters. I've never gone back and rewatched it, and I almost don't want to now.
It's a fever dream, man.
I don't want to ruin it for myself.
What you think is Episode 8 is not.
It's not Episode 8, and you're right. It's not. And if you the more times you rewatch the original trilogy, the more you realize this is the true Star Wars that I like, and that I can spend all my life trying to be edgy and different and like try to pick the thing that people least like to like the most. But Episode 5 is just amazing. Like, it's brisk. It's 2-hour runtime. It cleans up some of the Episode 4 is really good, the first one, but it's got that sort of first film feeling where not everything has been ironed out. Episode 5 starts to feel like there's the one that feels the most cohesive, and like there's no, I don't know, breaks in the action. Everything happens for a reason. Episode 6 there's a lot of it feels a little bit goofy and cheesy, more so than 4 and 5 with Jabba's palace, which is cool. There's a lot of cool weird stuff in Jabba's palace, but also the Ewoks, which are like cool, but also like if the Ewoks were not in episode 6, the film would still be like, it would do nothing to change the film's outcome or anything really. They honestly could have cut probably 10 minutes out if they didn't have the Ewoks, because they spent like maybe a little bit too much time with the Ewok fight scenes that they didn't have to. They could have done it a different way. But I'm not mad about it. I mean, the Ewoks are cool. They sold a lot of toys that way. They're lovable. So I think that just maybe didn't age as well. And it's sort of, George Lucas has this sort of like wide mind. But episode 5, I think, is like definitely my favorite. It has that, and that fight scene with Darth Vader and Luke is just like incredible. That might be my favorite moment in Star Wars. And you see the beginning of the Leia and Han kind of like enemies to lovers arc. Could have done without Luke kissing Leia, or Leia kissing Luke.
Hey, you live and you learn.
But you live and you learn. It was funny seeing Han when he like kissing Leia at the end of 6 and realizing, wait, like
he doesn't say anything.
He just found out that Luke was her brother. But she did that more out of spite for Han than anything, which I'm not. Well, and it's a mistake. Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad they didn't feel guilty.
They didn't know they were related.
They don't even. It doesn't even bother them.
No, not really.
They just move on. Oh, well.
What would you do about that? If you didn't know you were related, what can you actually do? Like,
their prefrontal cortex just blocked it.
Maybe be a little bit more like cautious about kissing people in general before you do background check, maybe. But other than that, like,
sure. Yeah, I think you're right. There was something that you said. I think the dialogue between the characters improved, especially from the first to the second film.
And you were talking about the lightsaber fighting.
Oh, yeah, that too. I mean, just some of the choreography of that, and spaceship travel, a lot of the characters, and storylines as well, I think, were a little bit more complex in the second and third films. Where the first film's a very simple film.
I love Hoth, too. Hoth is just a cool planet.
Yeah.
The snow and having to escape. It is cool that there's the instances you realize a lot of it's like the Empire's put us in a tough spot. We got to figure out how to get out of this. Those moments are always really cool to watch.
Yeah, and to see the characters in different roles kind of fleshes them out, like Leia as a general, and Luke kind of as this war hero that kind of goes and is stranded and has to kind of train, but he's really cocky, right? He's put in this situation where he's no longer the guy that's in charge. And then Yoda's kind of teaching him, so kind of studying under someone. And then Han just in the position where he's like kind of knows that Leia has a thing for Luke, but doesn't want to like overstep his boundaries. So he's kind of trying to figure that out and balance that. He's like showing some form of respect, even though he insults her to her face, So you're seeing these characters in these different scenarios, and then the characters are split up, right, throughout the film, your favorite film. And I think that's to their benefit, right? When they're split up, their characters grow. They're different, right?
Yeah.
Han becomes more of a hero, right? At first he was about himself. He just wanted to get the money, pay Jabba, get out, leave the...
It was a quick paycheck. That's what he said to Jabba. He was like, this is a guaranteed quick paycheck. Gonna be super easy. Didn't end up being that way.
But then he comes out of that, and he eventually, by the third film, is leading the attack on the Death Star.
He's General Solo.
And Leia is surprised to learn that. And when she sees that growth in him, she smiles and she says, I will go with you. And it's a great moment. And eventually they kiss, and he's like, I don't want to, I know you got a thing for Luke, I understand. And she's like, no, silly, she's my brother. And she says it without blinking or having any concern for anything that's happened before. But so, and then Leia, just her growth from being kind of just the one who needed saved to the one who's saving at the end, right? She goes in and has the mask in the third one and gets Han out of the carbonite block.
True.
And she saves them in the previous film as well.
And at the end, she gets shot, and then she's the one who shoots the stormtroopers to get them to block the shields. She did seem like more of a warrior and a fighter by the end. Partially because this is one thing this is a little tangent, but I'll go down it for a second. I didn't know she was on the Imperial Senate. So there's the Senate for the Imperial Empire. She, from Alderaan, is on that Senate. So that's Princess Leia. When she starts in the film, she's like this very diplomatic, like, this is me. Now, she had this tie-in with the Rebel Alliance, So she was trying to go underneath the Empire, but she had to give this front that like, this is who I am. And so to an extent, she probably hadn't been in the roles where she was like fighting for the Rebel Alliance as much as she was being a diplomat for the Rebel Alliance. So she did have to grow into that once her planet literally got blown up in the first film, and she didn't have anything left except for the Rebel Alliance to go to.
Yeah, and she's kind of following in her mom's footsteps where Padme was in that role. She was kind of this diplomat on Naboo. But the little bit of backstory is while Luke was sent to live with his uncle Owen and Beru Lars on Tatooine, Leia was actually separated at the guise of Obi-Wan to try to hide her from Darth Vader, and she was adopted on Alderaan by the senator Bail Organa and his wife Queen Breha Organa, and kind of became like the heir to the Alderaanian throne. And that's why she's kind of like representing Alderaan. And when they destroy Alderaan, it destroys her, right? She's extremely sad when the Death Star destroys it. So her home planet's destroyed as a sign of strength for the Death Star. And at that point, I think after that in the first film, she's kind of just on this full commitment to the Rebel Alliance. Whereas before, her ship was just kind of sending this communication from R2-D2 to Obi-Wan as her ship was being attacked. I'm not really sure what her ship was doing at that point, right? That ship was taking the Death Star plans from the end of Rogue One, right? Where they got it.
Right, yeah, because we know that now.
We know it now. But her ship was taking the Death Star plans so she was already intertwined with the Rebel Alliance at some point, right? So Alderaan supposedly is this good, quote-unquote, planet who's fighting for the peace.
And perhaps you have to wonder whether there was a specific thing that happened where Alderaan felt threatened. So you're right. At this point, she could be acting more because of her planet than because of the Rebel Alliance. The Rebel Alliance is just helping her.
But once her planet is destroyed, and again, she doesn't show that much remorse, but she is fully committed to the Rebel Alliance and becomes more of a warrior rather than a diplomat, which is what you were saying. So it's that character arc is clearly seen. You kind of have to fill in some of the context with some of the newer stuff a little bit, but overall, you can at least see that she fights more, right? At the very least.
Yeah.
And then Luke has the biggest storyline of them all, right? Coming from this little kid from Tatooine who doesn't know anything, who's really cocky and complains a lot, to the end where he's a Jedi, using the power of his will to decide to not show hate and to not try to kill his father. And that, in the end, is what saves everyone.
Yeah, true.
Like Yoda said, right? Yoda said he wasn't ready when he fought him in The Empire Strikes Back, and that's why they lost. That's why they had all those setbacks happen. Luke has the biggest storyline. And he's trained by two different guys, right? We have Obi-Wan and Yoda, those people.
Two of the wisest Jedi Knights that there are.
Yeah, but they have made mistakes that have led to this. Obi-Wan's biggest mistake was training Anakin. Yoda's was, I don't know,
letting
Obi-Wan train Anakin because he was on the Jedi Council.
Yeah, he was the
and the
leader.
To be fair, they all voted against it unanimously, I think. But Qui-Gon still did it. Anyway, so. That is the interesting thing about it. I've heard when I was little, I had this little pet toy Yoda, right? It was like this little toy, and it would speak, and I said all these phrases, right? Like, do or do not, there is no try, stuff like that. And Yoda just became this legendary character. But when you actually watch the films, he's not like this goofy legendary character. He's legit wise. And I think at one point he says, Luke's like, no, I'm not looking for you. I'm looking for this great warrior, right? And he goes, war doesn't make someone great. He says like that. And Luke's like, what? So it's like Yoda is actually wise.
Yeah, well, I will say when he first is introduced, he is extremely goofy.
Yeah, he's goofy, but
he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah,
because he's trying to get under Luke's skin a little bit to prove a point.
Exactly.
To him. So I was watching it. I was like, it's kind of amazing, just thinking about the fact, like, that this Yoda, whatever, I forget what they call whatever alien he is like the greatest Jedi warrior to ever live. I was like, but you see it progress, especially in 6, right before he dies, and he's kind of like in his all wisdom phase, and you're like, oh, okay, I see why George Lucas chose this, and didn't chose Ben Kenobi to be that role. He chose Yoda.
Yeah, and Yoda's like really small, right? He looks weak. But supposedly, and we don't get to see it in these films, but he's the greatest Jedi. And apparently the last Jedi up until Luke. So it was nice that he had that passed down to Luke and then eventually to Rey in the future. Again, I'm connecting all the dots, right? And I'm thinking like we got to see Yoda fight in the prequels, so like we know how great he is and how fast he can spin his lightsaber, that green lightsaber.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of that background to help us.
It's like an extra small lightsaber to fit his size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and his force is pretty amazing too when he's fighting Count Dooku. But I mean, didn't Yoda train Count Dooku? So like, there's stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know. So
exactly.
yeah, I'd say my favorite is got to be the first one. I think it's just too classic for me. I love the hero's journey. I love how simple it is. I love the effects of the time, and I'm not just saying that. I think Empire Strikes Back is better. I think my favorite.
Yeah, but I can understand why Star Wars would be your favorite, because A New Hope has that like, and it's a complete movie with like an arc within itself.
Exactly.
Whereas I don't think you can say that about Empire Strikes Back.
Definitely not. Definitely. So, yeah, how is it held up over time, these films?
I think really good.
Okay.
I think you can pick nits like I did with the Ewoks, and you could maybe pick nits about other things, but
Nitpick?
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, pick nits.
Is that different? I've never heard that.
I think I picked it up from a podcast I listened to.
Pick nits.
Picking nits. I think is what they called it. Yeah, but you can nitpick all the stuff.
Do you think that they held up because of the added special effects post when the films came out?
Actually, no, because most of the time I was kind of annoyed by the added special effects.
Like
now,
the song that was in Jabba's palace.
It
was so stupid.
Bother me. It just wasn't necessary.
And then there was like that alien that burps.
Yeah, the one dude that burps in episode. So a lot of the episode 6 added stuff, especially. I don't think they added a whole lot to episode 5.
There were a few things.
Maybe a few things. But episode 6, there was a ton of add-ins. You're like, why did we do this? Episode 4, there was a couple.
The end, they add Naboo and Coruscant.
Yeah, so I'd love to watch the original. You said you have the originals. I should probably watch those sometime with like pure. Some things like you said the Sarlacc looked better, redone this way.
Yep.
Yeah.
The original Sarlacc looked like cardboard, man.
So actually, I should just look up a picture. Yeah. So I think there's a few times that it was like, yeah, it made sense. But other than that, I mean,
Jabba. I think Jabba was an improvement. The original Jabba was a puppet and really did not look good at all, and it kind of took me out of it. But still, I mean, there's something to having the original practical effects in the original film, and it kind of cheapens that, I feel like, when you add all these special effects. I don't know. I think that's up to people's opinions. You see it?
I see the original. You're right.
Pretty bad. Look up the original Jabba and see for your own eyes. So I think that's actually a perfect segue into a big topic that we should probably go into. You see it?
Oh my gosh.
It looks so bad.
Look at this picture.
It looks so horrible. I know.
Yeah.
A big topic that we should probably get into is the acquisition of 21st Century Fox by Disney and kind of how they did the prequels and then the sequels as well.
Yeah, but that isn't originally how Disney acquired Star Wars.
They got it separately from 21st?
Yeah. They acquired it from Lucas. So Lucasfilm retained the rights for Star Wars.
Okay.
So
under Disney.
Under nobody.
Okay.
So I think it was always distributed through 21st Century Fox, but Lucasfilm like owned the rights to the movies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I think that's how it worked. And then what happened was Disney bought Lucasfilm for, I forget. I'm gonna look up how much it was, but it was a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So then they did eventually buy a lot of 21st Century Fox. So that did happen too.
Yeah. And that was more recent. That was in 2015, I think. So because of that, Disney's had some kind of role in these films, right? Whether Lucas has had a role as well or not.
Yeah. So October 30th, 2012, Disney bought Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion.
Okay.
And another $2 billion in stock. Well, that was it.
Okay.
So
well, good for George.
George did very, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Disney has had their grimy hands all over this franchise since then.
And we have an episode entitled "Disney is the worst production company ever."
We do actually.
And we'll never get a deal with Disney because of that, because our digital footprint has made its mark.
Fortunately, Disney hasn't really tried that hard to get into the podcasting space.
Yeah.
So we're not yet, until they like buy Spotify or something.
True. Although right now they're not doing so well. And 2023 was a pretty bad year for them.
Yeah.
So, which is good.
Which is good because they've been doing a lot of just like not
stupid
very good things.
So the rise and fall of Disney, that's a separate story, right?
Yeah.
There's this great buildup of these great films being made by this, family-friendly company that's kind of come downhill as the quality has dropped, as they have gone more broad and acquired and gained more properties.
I really think that Disney over time has been, like, people romanticize a lot of parts of Disney, but I think there's been several ups and downs for the companies over the years.
But you could say that overall the trend has been a large down at the moment.
It was up, and now we're going into a down period, because there was a huge up period for Disney when they were acquiring all of these things.
Yeah.
But now the momentum after they acquired all of these things has led to a lot of it going down, because they acquired Marvel, it was like they bought everything, and then but the reason they were buying all of these things was to make a lot of money, so they kind of just kept doing, but all of these things started from ideas that weren't originally Disney's, so then they're hiring on people to take over these projects that don't have the same stake that the people who originated the ideas, would have in them. And of course, like, Stan Lee passed away, George Lucas, I don't know how involved he is in the current Star Wars.
No, he doesn't like them.
He doesn't like them. So he's not involved. And I'm not even saying George Lucas should necessarily be involved.
No, because he made the prequels too.
Yeah, because he made the prequels. So it's not like even if you are the originator of the idea, that doesn't necessarily make you, the end all be all when it comes to making a new thing. But it's just the emphasis on quantity has been the annoying part about all of it, I think. Like, okay, now we got to have shows, and we got to have shows about so many different things. It's not just one show. It's like,
maybe I should rephrase
shows.
it. I think you're right. Maybe I should rephrase it as, with the emergence of Disney Plus, we have seen visibly this push for more content at the expense of quality.
Yeah, and the interesting part is, I think if you would talk to me when I was like 12, I would have said this was awesome. And maybe if Disney Plus would have come out and I watched all this content at 12, I would have thought all of it was the greatest stuff in the world. So maybe that it is like truly for 12-year-olds. Because at 12, you don't care about the artistic merit, or like, it's just like anything is awesome at the age of 12 to an extent. I mean, maybe at some point you can start, but the prequels are like, when you're a little kid, they're like cool, because there's like, you like all the flashiness and the lights and all the lightsaber battles and all the things.
I have one rebuttal. There has to be something. There has to be some kind of statistical significance for the fact that Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, and other large franchises that have had at least good runs in the last 10 years have, in the last few years since the emergence of Disney Plus, gone down in quality at a visible level.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you, and Pixar is a fantastic example, because if you would have asked me about 4 or 5 years ago what I thought of Pixar, I would have said maybe the best, like, large film organization that there is in terms of, like, hits versus misses. But if you factor in the last 4 or 5 years, like, when's the last time you were excited about a Pixar movie?
Oh yeah, never.
For me, it was Soul in 2020. I liked it.
That was good.
I didn't really think it was gonna be like have the same impact on kids that Cars did, or Up, or Monsters Inc. or something like that, or Toy Story. No, it wasn't gonna be like that movie, but I thought it was a good movie. But since that movie, nothing that they have done has been interesting.
Yeah, not even Turning Red.
Yeah, not even Turning Red. And that was the one with the most promise.
But we even see that with A24 at the moment, where they're making a larger quantity of films, and some of the films are hit or miss for me.
I mean, to an extent, but A24 is a little different case, because they've always kind of done that since they started.
Yeah, but they used to do only a few films a year. Now they're doing so many.
Well, they distributed tons of films, but I get what you mean.
Well, now they're distributing more.
They're distributing and producing films now. And the produced ones aren't always hits.
But generally, the increase in quantity has decreased the quality. That's like the thesis that I'm trying to make.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think for a company like Disney, who knows that they're going to turn a profit, there should be more of an emphasis. I think with a smaller company like A24, they're going to be trying to throw stuff at the wall. So that's going to be why why they have certain things that don't work out, because they're like, we're gonna try this, see if it works.
Yeah, and this
But
conversation
Disney has no excuses really.
No, they do not. I mean, unless they need to impress their investors, then they have an
their
excuse.
excuse is that they're almost they almost got to the point where they were too successful for their own good, because then they stopped emphasizing, if you're really worried about whether you're going to make a profit on something, you're going to spend a lot of time making sure that it's good. Now, of course, it depends on who's doing that, because sometimes producers are really worried about turning a profit, and then that messes up the movie because they take away creative freedoms from people, and they end up turning in something they think is safe, which there's not really art that's safe if you really think about it. And because it's safe, that also means uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's what Disney's doing. They're like, we have calculated out, we think if we do this, it'll make a profit. So we're just doing a bunch of safe things.
Yeah.
And they're not taking any creative risks. Since Rian Johnson made Episode 8, there are no creative risks at Disney.
I actually think that is a reverberation from Disney, from the backlash that they've had because of some of the political arguments they've made in movies.
True. Yeah.
So I think, but you're also right in a mathematical sense. Like, they've been calculating for the last few decades, just like what movie will make us the most money. Those models won't work forever. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So you
and
can't do that.
They're operating like they are going to work forever.
Sure.
I think it's part of what's going
on.
on.
And no matter what Disney does in the future, it will still have this content that has kind of been pretty garbage lately, in my opinion. And this isn't a pointless conversation. This relates to Star Wars because of what has followed these films, right? Even between these films, there was a Star Wars Christmas special.
Yeah, which I still have never seen.
Yeah.
I would like to watch it.
It's really boring. It's really boring.
Is it actually really boring?
Yeah.
That's so sad.
So,
well, the fact that they had a Star Wars Christmas special is so stupid, though, because there should not. I mean, why is there Christmas? It doesn't make sense.
And it's on Endor.
Of course, with the Ewoks.
Yep.
That they want to sell.
They were setting it up. They knew a spinoff would ensue. So, what has followed is just a plethora of films, TV shows, books, comics, other media that 4D experiences.
Pretty much any media you
Dreams.
could think of, Star Wars has been a part of.
Conversations. What do we consider canon?
Well, initially there was a canon that was established, and then what happened is Disney bought the movies, and then they split everything up into canon, which was like the original stuff, the original movies, and anything that they made after that was canon. And then there was like, I forget what they called it. It was like lore or something like that. Like, maybe it's true or maybe it's not. And that was like all those books and, comics. And when you get the complete encyclopedia and you'd read past episode 6, and it was like Palpatine rises from the dead, which they did pull from. So that was like something that I was expecting. There was like other Sith and other villains. I forget what they were called. And then there was the Old Republic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was like way before. There's a video game. I think video games played into a lot of these things too, because there was like Knights of the Old Republic.
Well, after the Old Republic, there was a High Republic, and then there was the New Republic, and then the new Jedi Order. There's lots of different rises and falls.
Exactly. There was like a huge Jedi temple. There was a Sith temple. Then there was the Rule of the Twos. So you got all this lore that was like, none of this was the Rule of the Twos. Did they ever mention that in the movies? Like, that was something that, it was kind of like an unwritten rule. Like, there's
Explain
only
it.
2 Sith. That like the Sith, there was like one Sith Lord and the person under the Sith Lord, and so in order for there to be somebody else, somebody has to die basically. So like Anakin killed Count Dooku, so then he could be the person under. And they were kind of insinuating that with Luke killing Vader and becoming the next. So it's like there could only be 2
So Vader should have seen that.
It was like they could concentrate all the power in those 2 people. But I think what Vader was suggesting Luke do is that they both kill the Empire, and then they're
Well, he did suggest that. He said, come join me and we can run the galaxy, father and son.
And that brings me to one of my major questions with Star Wars, which I wrote down, which is that how much of this, and this is maybe an unanswerable question, but like how much of Star Wars is reactionary in planning and how much of it is thought out? Because and just thinking about the original 3 movies, right? So how much, like, was the 5th movie like set in stone. I don't think the fifth movie was set in stone when the fourth movie came out. I think they adjusted and changed things.
No.
They had
But
some
plans.
of this lore that we kind of take for granted, like I said, with the rule of the twos that people kind of just know about. Like, did that just happen because there was Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine? So they're like, I guess there's just two of these Sith Lords. They didn't even call them Sith Lords. That came later. At least not in the movies. Maybe George Lucas in interviews would call them something.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. But
if you're talking about reaction as in from these first three original films, is that what you're saying? Yeah, I think you can see that very clearly. I think
it was definitely reaction. It wasn't like George Lucas saying, okay, I'm envisioning that there was an Order 66, and so that's why Yoda's saying that you're the last Jedi because all the other Jedis got killed. I mean, that was a reaction to Yoda saying that they did Order 66. That's kind of what I'm suggesting.
Sure. And then the fact that Luke is the last Jedi, and then making the film The Last Jedi. I don't know. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to be reactionary, and I think with any film franchise, naturally there's some reactionary because you have to fit within the actual lore that's already set. But there's also this element of they're forcing a lot of plugs into these plot holes that don't need to be necessarily filled as well. I think a lot of examples of that come with the storylines in the prequels where Anakin is kind of becoming bad. Although it's a great storyline, it's filling in all of these extra details that don't necessarily need to be filled that maybe some fans were asking for, but wasn't actually executed that well.
You're right. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that it's not necessarily that the prequels are reactionary, because they have to be in order to be consistent, but it's that when the ways that they like solve the problems of like we have to be consistent with the original three movies, like didn't make the franchise more interesting or benefit the franchise overall. I don't think it was better that they were not explained, which goes back to our Donnie Darko director's cut days of like some things are better in movies when you don't know all the answers.
Ambiguity. I'm slowly becoming accustomed to your side of that. Yeah, I think you're right. And we even see that even more clearly in the sequels, I'd say, where just within that trilogy, you see some reactions happening where the seventh takes you in one direction, the eighth twists that direction, and the ninth tries to, bring it back home safely somehow.
Which was almost like the worst thing that they could have done.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's like, all right, we killed Snoke. Now what do we do? Well, we got to bring back the Emperor. Well, in some book that isn't canon, we'll make it canon so that, it's all, you're right. It is reactionary. I think that's the clearest picture. And I think a lot of the TV shows as well fill in some of those gaps too. But that also might be a good structure because I think it makes the focal point the original trilogy where it should be.
Yeah.
No other film has felt more important than these films.
No.
There's no film that felt like, wow, this is a big moment in the Skywalker saga that is bigger than the original films.
The only one that people really will bring up as being like their favorite, if it's not in the original trilogy, is Episode 3. Mm-hmm. And even I'm like, it's better than Episode 1 and 2, but I just don't see it being more interesting unless you're like really into anti-hero or downfall tragedy arcs more so than you are the hero's journey. Then I guess it'd be really interesting to you.
I think what sends that up for me is the Battle of Mustafar with Obi-Wan and Anakin. Yeah. But that's just one. That's one big scene.
Yeah, the meeting of the two and the master versus apprentice battle, and that sets up really well for the second battle that happens in 4. So it's not like they messed up everything in the prequel, but
yeah, everything else. I mean, even just having a child actor play Anakin in the first film, it just feels disconnected, And then you have the actual actor Christopher, whatever his name is, I forget his name in the next film.
I forget what his name is too.
But
that's how he's not really an amazing actor. That's why people forget his name.
But Ben, I think
like Christian something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm thinking of Hayden Christensen. I was thinking of Christopher Lee, who plays Count Dooku, who actually tragically passed away. I think, Ben, it's a mixture of reactionary and more recently fan service.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we've had a lot of explanations that were made and people brought back and cameos introduced. That is just unnecessary.
It's weird though to think of the sequel trilogy as fan service because it upset so many of the fans. So it's like it didn't work. But that's because they had episode 8. If episode 7 was like to the T what you would like think fans would want.
Mm-hmm. And people were like all right with it.
Yeah.
Overall.
Episode 8 is where, those of us who aren't as, worried about things being consistent or care as much about that, like, are as nostalgic about things, might be like, oh, that's interesting that you would propose that would be something you can do with the Force. Or what was even the most controversial about that? I know that like one of the things is that there's like kind of some segments of the plot that don't really go anywhere, like the casino part.
Mm-hmm. That's in the second. You're talking about the second.
Yeah, in episode 8.
Yeah. I think you're right.
But it seems like people were upset by like Luke being able to like project himself with the Force, and then like the conversations between Rey and Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. But although I think that that's consistent because there's a scene in episode 5 where Luke and Darth Vader talk to each other. Now they're not. It doesn't look like they're in the same room, but they also didn't have the technology to do that. So my argument for that specific thing would be that they did that in the original Star Wars. But there's other stuff. I don't think that was like the only thing. I think the Force casting, which nobody had ever done. I don't think that wasn't like a thing.
Or Leia using the Force.
But that was even in the original trilogy.
I thought it was annoying that in this we just watched.
I think it was annoying because of how they did it, and obviously it was Carrie Fisher passed away, which was really sad. It felt like they just kind of messed up being able to send her off like in a heroic manner, and they did it in like a really cheesy way, which annoyed a lot of people. So you see, this is my like I just like choose to forget about a lot of the parts of episode 8 that I didn't like and focus on the parts that I thought were cool. But
yeah, I think another thing is Luke was kind of cynical,
which I was completely fine with. I think that's where I diverged from a lot of people.
I think I'm tired of, just like in the new Dial of Destiny film, our positive heroes becoming cynical in this cynical age.
I guess you're right. People are very cynical, and when you're like, oh, this person, even Luke Skywalker's cynical, even Indiana Jones is cynical, I guess that could get frustrating. And maybe the hard part is with Luke, I think maybe what messed it up too is the performance of Luke in the next trilogy, like the sequel trilogy, is a lot more like Mark Hamill as a person than it is like maybe Luke Skywalker, which maybe goes to
he looks way different.
Mark Hamill changed as a person a lot, I think, and it maybe I think you see less of him acting as Luke Skywalker, more of just it's Mark Hamill. So I think that's a little bit difficult because that's how I think the way he acted is kind of like how Mark Hamill acts in real life. Whereas I'm not sure that was the case when he was so young playing Luke Skywalker and hadn't like developed as much.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen too many interviews with Mark Hamill.
I just know he seemed like, just from the way that I've seen him carry himself, it's like kind of like that. It's like sarcastic and like a little bit of an edge to him.
Yeah, I mean he does play the Joker in the animated Batman.
Yeah,
so.
He had a really nice second career as a voice actor after Star Wars.
He actually had a cameo as a villain in the Flash series.
Oh, really?
On CW.
That's funny.
That was the lowest point of his career, I bet.
Yeah, probably. He's like, how did I get here? Harrison Ford definitely had the best acting career of anybody after this.
Oh, yeah.
He was like the star that they found. He was in American Graffiti, too, just plays a side character, then main character here, and then goes on to do Indiana Jones and so many action movies. And
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner was actually, I want to say Blade Runner was 1982, so he was like doing it while he was doing Star Wars, which is interesting. Blade Runner sort of levels up sci-fi to a different level, but again, it goes back to Blade Runner also had a myriad of issues with like which cut was good in the studio, and I feel like it was kind of successful later on. Plus, it wasn't as appealing to a broad audience, so. There's that. Blade Runner 2049, though, is a really incredible sequel.
And that's an interesting thing, Ben. I think you'd like this topic. What defines canon? I'm thinking about this in a broad audience sense, because remember how we had the controversy of Justice League, and there was the Snyder cut that was predicted, or it was almost like a myth, right?
Yeah, it was like they didn't let Zack Snyder of the final cut.
Yeah.
This movie, which we think is trash, would be saved if more stuff was left in and it was like played out in the way that this guy, Zack Snyder, who I've never seen a guy who really, honestly, I don't know, has really done anything major of note, get so much mythos. Like Zack Snyder, what did he direct? Like the 300, like Watchmen. Like those aren't movies that people are gonna like be going back 200 years from now and being like, this was a super important movie.
Sure. I think well, sidebar, I think a lot of that came from, that was the height of Marvel, and it was a DC
fans,
reactionary
we're wanting
event.
They thought this could be their Marvel thing.
That was their picketing and signing petitions for Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League was their Infinity War. That's as much fun as, that's the peak of their DC existence, was that out of movie experience. Anyway, that's the side note. The what was made canon, so it was eventually made, right?
Right.
The studios caved in and they made a 4-hour black and white version of the Justice League.
Was it all? I didn't realize it was all black and white.
I mean, I think a lot of it is. I don't know. I didn't watch it. So
yeah, I haven't watched it either.
I don't have 4 hours on my plate, but maybe besides this. So I think the audience had a say in what happened. And this is what you were going with, I can tell. You were trying to get to that, where the audience really pressured the studio to do something and they did it. And Disney is an example of that, where political things pressured Disney into doing certain things. Star Wars fans are nasty.
Yeah, you're right.
They are horrible. It's worse than Ohio State fans. They are absolutely terrible. And their canon is so valuable to them.
It's almost like a religion to some people. Or it is a religion to some people.
It is a religion. They will fight tooth and nail for their franchise, to the point where they will go up against the own creator of Star Wars when they don't like the prequels, right?
Right. Yeah.
Stuff that their own creator, the person who they worshipped 10 years earlier, is making a film and they don't like it. They just get him. It's theirs, right? They don't care whose it is. It's their franchise.
It becomes the fans at some point. It's no longer whoever made it.
I think every subsequent thing that has happened after this is because of the fans. I think the fans have had a say in every single thing, and I think that is to the absolute fault of Star Wars. And then you can realize that the fans really only have themselves to blame for the outcome. Like when Disney bought Lucasfilm, there was a lot of excitement around it, and there was a lot of excitement for these movies. So and they were trying to hire people who were like interesting and good directors, and I think where they messed up though. I think Disney did mess up. I think the fans ruined Episode 9 because they had to like go back to J.J. Abrams. But the studio had it all messed up from the beginning when they didn't have a consistent plan for what they were going to do. They should have said, it's almost like the studio was trying to be reactionary to what the fans said. Let's do a reiteration of the fourth movie of Episode 4,
and then we'll react to that.
Exactly.
Make an episode that has a twist, but the problem with that is they do have J.J. Abrams, who's a perfect guy to be like, he directed Mission Impossible 3. That's the kind of director J.J. Abrams is. He directs Mission Impossible, the third one. So it's like you can plug him in, and he can take your movie, and he could be a pretty solid director.
He can play the game.
And he knows how to, be interesting but not too take too many risks. Then you hire Rian Johnson, who's like made Looper and like movies like that, and he likes being creative, and he's honestly more of a. He's still a very like in the commercial zone. I wouldn't consider him he's not an art house director, he's not like independent or anything like that, but he's trying to do stuff that is different, maybe edgy, and maybe also just doesn't have as much respect for like the canon or the fans as maybe J.J. Abrams did, or I don't honestly know what was going on through his head, but I don't know why they switched from J.J. Abrams to a different guy who had a like different philosophy on filmmaking. Then they have him do this whole thing. I don't know to what extent he had creative control and the studio had creative, but obviously they agreed to release this Episode 8, and then it came out. People were all upset about it. But I think almost at that point, when you do that, you kind of have to like own it. You're like, this is what we did. So now we're going to double down on it with episode 9 and bring the story to conclusion. People will still go and watch it. You'll still make money. And then you can like reassess from there and be like, okay, because you already messed up, quote unquote, with episode 8. So why like, so what they tried to do, bring J.J. Abrams back and fix it. That got the lowest reviews of any of them because it was just like they couldn't save it from episode 8.
But I also understand, because who was Disney afraid of in that? Were they afraid of messing up the script? Were they afraid of offending some director? No, they were afraid of the fans. They were afraid of the fans.
But then because of that, they made a movie that was like the worst, made the worst sin of all movie sins. It was boring. Like that's the worst thing you can do with a movie. I mean, say what you want about episode 8, at least it wasn't boring. Like
true.
In a lot of points.
That's the only good thing I'll say about it. Seriously. I mean, I like some of the fight scenes too. If you watch a deep dive of that Kylo Ren and Imperial Guard fight, the Imperial Guards aren't hitting them. They're like missing every single.
They're like stormtroopers.
No, I have to send you that video. If you're listening to this, look up a slow, like a slow motion of Kylo Ren fighting the Red Imperial Guards, and just start crying. It's so bad. The choreography is horrible.
The one thing episode 9 did do great. It's so funny we're talking about the sequel trilogy so much, but is that Kylo Ren and Rey should have kissed. I knew it. For episode 8, there was so much tension there. You just knew it was going to happen.
It was confusing for me. I thought they were brother and sister. I was like, is this another Luke Leia situation?
That would be hilarious if they were like, yep, we're doing that again. Yeah. But no.
So, and they brought back the Emperor and just bringing back people, fan service. It's a mixture of these things that we're talking about, right? Like and I think the core of it is like whoever is in the reins of Star Wars, whoever is in control, those people of power, like that's real, like it is real power, because this is a cultural pillar of the last 3 generations.
It could impact, wars, governments,
and when we go into I promise you, Ben, when we start colonizing space, there will be initiatives, planets, and government systems named after Star Wars motifs.
Probably. I mean, wasn't there didn't Ronald Reagan have a
Star Wars because it was the laser, it was fake. Yeah. Anyway, it really was fake. It was just to make, I think it was the Russians, just to scare them.
Cold War. And they named it Star Wars. See? Yeah.
Exactly. It's already started. But I think the core of all of Star Wars' problems is the fans. If you think about it, right? Like Disney, they were just trying to make as much money as they can, but they're doing it trying to make money from a specific large fan base that is very toxic in its culture, that reacts very strongly to anything that happens, right? So what Disney is thinking is, okay, we need to make Star Wars content for the breadth of people. We no longer can risk making a single Star Wars thing and make it be either great or bad, and most of the time bad, right? They haven't really had much success before that. So then Disney, what they do is with Lucasfilm, is they start making tons and tons of properties to try to spread out these audiences. And because if they spread out these audiences, then the toxicity doesn't hurt them as much, right? The fan base isn't as powerful if they divide and conquer. So it's like, I think at the core, if you look at it from any angle, the core of the problem with Star Wars is its fans. So I think Star Wars was doomed to fail since the first film was made. I really do. Just the whole franchise in general. Luckily, we got a great trilogy out of it, right? Luckily, George Lucas was not really reactionary to himself. He had a clear vision. They didn't change directors for him, right?
Well, they did, actually. But I feel like, because George Lucas directed the first one, but they had 2 other guys direct the 5th and 6th one, which people don't really... I don't think people know about that, but I think it was... I don't think those directors had as much of an impact on the movies as the directors that did, the sequel trilogy. Like, Irvin Kershner directed episode 5. He did. I mean, I've never heard of a single other movie he directed. Exactly. Who is that? He's a guy they could hire who could come in and direct a movie. But more of a J.J. Abrams than anything, I think.
Sure.
But George Lucas wrote the script. I think he might have wrote it with some other people, but... and then, he had this guy come in and do the actual work of directing. But I think he was there. Like, I feel like Lucas was still intimately involved with the whole project. He just wasn't officially the director.
He's in all of the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
He did a lot of the choreography. I think we should get into some of the other things that were made. So a lot of the TV shows, so for example, like The Mandalorian, that's been a big one in the last few years, especially I think it started in like 2019 or something like that till present day. You just have the commercialization and trying to spread and conquer of the fan base by Disney. So you got like these toy selling figures, just like Grogu and what's the IB-8? I forget his name. And then there's BB-8 in the sequels as well. A lot of it is to sell toys, and you can tell, like, even in the original trilogy, the Ewoks were to sell toys. But there are ulterior motives to segment this fan base in each of these subsequent franchise entries. It's just deteriorated it. I think for me, having seen all of the entries pretty much, except for I don't think I've seen the new Ahsoka, and I haven't seen all of the Star Wars Rebels or Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just not even. I can't get through it. It's just so not great. And the best part about Andor is how disconnected it was from the rest of the Star Wars universe. So, yeah, I mean that's kind of my take on where Star Wars has gone as a whole, and just kind of how there. I really don't believe that there's any solution to Star Wars. There's nothing really that can be made that's going to fix what's happened before. Especially since what the problem is isn't necessarily at its root Disney. Disney is going to survive. Disney is an organism, right? It needs food to survive. That food is its money. And it gets money from a fan base by killing that fan base. So, of course, Disney is going to leech off of us and try to make the most general things ever and make a ton of content just to leech off of us so that it itself can survive.
Yeah, and eventually it will slow down, I think, at some point. And then what will happen is kind of what happened before. There'll be a dormant period. Time will build up, and then all of a sudden it'll be like a nostalgic future where people want new Star Wars content again. The whole cycle starts again, right? And then they release a bunch of content. I guess I don't know that it'll slow down to like absolutely nothing. And really, I don't know when the last time there was absolutely nothing was, because they had the Clone Wars TV show. It's like it's been a while since there was absolutely no Star Wars content coming out at all of any kind. But
just between the
that's the nature of the
originals
beast.
and the prequels, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, and that was actually kind of a long period of time, 83 to 99. I guess if you think about it, you're like, that's 16 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were doing Indiana Jones for a lot of that in between period, which the trying to bring that back has also not really gone very well.
No,
but it's great. I mean, the other George Lucas's legacy is essentially Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
American Graffiti is a decent movie, but that's what he devoted his life to, basically.
Yeah.
And they're great.
And he's rich.
And he's very rich. So, and now Disney can do whatever they want with both of those, because I think they own both of them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should go into the acting.
The acting. Oh, this is a nice one, because I think one thing people do say about Star Wars is they're not convinced that the actors are like the best actors. But I think that's kind of
There's no argument being made for that.
No.
But I think the argument is, are they good at all?
Are they good at all?
Or that's the question.
Are they good at all? Yeah. I mean, Harrison Ford's good, but I think in this movie, it is a very dialogue is difficult in Star Wars. It's been a problem for like the whole franchise. I mean, it doesn't get any better in the sequel, so you got to wonder whether it's not all the actors, but somewhat on the writers that the dialogue seems awkward. Because even with Han, he makes quips. He's kind of funny, but sometimes they feel a little out of place. And he and Leia's chemistry, where they go from like being at each other's throats to just being in love all of a sudden, is like weird. And Han Solo, there's like a couple scenes where it's like it's actually kind of weird. Mm-hmm. Like he's like holding on to Leia. She's like, "Please let go of me," and he's like, "No." That's weird. Like it doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. You're like, and maybe it was the 80s, it was the 70s. Things were a little different back then. But like, I don't know. We should just forgive him. And all of a sudden, Leia's like, "Oh, I'm in love with you." Like, I don't know. It was a little douchey.
Okay. I guess, yeah.
But that doesn't really go into acting. That's more writing critique.
I think Han and Luke in the first film especially seemed really whiny.
Yeah.
Just like Luke's like, "Oh, I gotta go clean the carbon converters." He would say stuff like with such a whiny.
You're right. It was very
tone.
whiny. And when they're in the trash compactor, that was one of the worst.
Yeah.
Where they're just like yelling at each other.
Why is he talking like that? I mean, it's like, why is he like, I don't know. He's extending his vowels.
It's kind of like Anakin complaining about the sand, but
Yeah.
like all the time.
I like the sound.
I want to go to the academy.
Yeah. Yeah, right? He's like, I can't do one more harvest.
It's just super ungrateful for what his uncle and aunt have done for him.
Yeah. So I think best actor in this film, Lando, in this franchise.
Lando is good. He's good. Who acted Lando?
I can't remember.
Billy
Leia's
D.
pretty
Williams. Yeah, Billy D. Williams. Good actor.
Leia's all right. Carrie Fisher.
Yeah. She does a good job.
Harrison Ford has done much better.
Yeah. No, I think his best acting was to come.
Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely done
How
better.
did he do in American Graffiti?
He was solid in his role. It wasn't a very big role. Like his role came into fruition more at the end of the movie.
Okay.
But he fit the role well, so it was fine.
All right.
But it wasn't like a take over the movie kind of acting performance.
Okay. And then Mark Hamill, I've seen a lot of him in different things. I think he does well. I wouldn't call him a great actor.
No, he's a serviceable actor.
Yeah.
He's maybe a great vocal actor. Like
Sure.
Voice actor.
Yeah.
Like for the Joker.
Yeah.
I haven't watched all those series in depth. I've just only ever heard positive things about what
No, he does great in that.
Yeah.
I think he's more of a cartoony type of guy.
Yeah.
Which is
exactly.
fine because Star Wars is cartoony. And really, there is a loss in the sequels and the prequels even where the seriousness just it overtakes and it makes it even more cheesy than it would be if they tried to be cheesy. So, yeah.
I'm curious if I can see how they decided to cast these people.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to imagine that American Graffiti, the reception of it.
Lucas favored casting young actors who lacked experience. So, maybe that is why.
Okay.
He chose... Hamill found the dialogue extremely odd. He chose to read it sincerely. And so he was cast instead of somebody else because of that. So other people who were considered were Robbie Benson, Will Seltzer, Charles Martin Smith, and Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
Yeah. So Kurt Russell, that would make... Well, imagine Kurt Russell and Harrison Ford.
Wow.
I don't know what Kurt Russell looked like in 1977, so I don't know.
Probably a little bit more buff than...
But it would have been weird to see
Mark Hamill.
Kurt Russell as Luke Skywalker when he was old.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Ford won over Kurt Russell, Nick Nolte, Sylvester Stallone, Bill Murray, Christopher Walken, Burt Reynolds, Jack Nicholson, James Caan, Robert De Niro, Kelsey Grammer, Al Pacino, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Perry King.
What a
Wow.
lineup.
I did say he had sometimes he reminded me of Steve Martin a lot.
You did say that, yeah.
Maybe that's just because I watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles not too long ago, and
Sure.
another Steve Martin movie. I think Father of the Bride. Yeah, his mannerisms are like eerily similar to Harrison Ford. He just has more of a comedic edge to him,
Who would
like
you
in a not action way.
Who would you like to play Han Solo from that list? I have mine. I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
Christopher Walken
Christopher Walken. Oh,
with his long hair.
I might have to agree with that. Because okay, De Niro, I can't see De Niro or Pacino being in this movie.
Faces are too big.
I guess at this point I forget that they weren't like at the height of their fame yet, neither of them. But I guess they had both been in The Godfather though. I just can't it feels like it would take you out of the movie to some extent.
They're a little bit more sophisticated, I'd say.
I wouldn't even say sophisticated. They just don't fit the world.
They're not really sci-fi people. I mean, when Sylvester Stallone
doesn't make any sense. Bill Murray is a really weird. I just can't imagine Bill Murray. Can you imagine Chevy Chase? What's his character in Community?
He would have squeezed Carrie Fisher
Pierce.
harder and not let her go longer.
Pierce. Imagine Pierce as old Han Solo.
Yeah, crazy.
That would not have worked. No.
Crazy.
I don't think
they wouldn't have brought him back.
He's not an action. Some of these people weren't action stars. Jack Nicholson would have been way over the top. It would not have worked very well.
He would have killed
His
everyone.
chemistry would have been horrible with Carrie Fisher.
Too aggressive.
Nick Nolte might have been okay, but I'm not as familiar with his work. But I just have a feeling.
I think Christopher Walken is an action star, and he has suave with Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, you're right. I think he was perfect. I think Kurt Russell would have been better fit in this role than Luke, but
Really?
Yeah, as Han Solo, he's more of an.
As Han Solo. I see
Yeah.
what you mean. Okay. Yeah, I'd say so.
Leia was. I'm not gonna know. I don't know who any of these people are. Amy Irving, Terry Nunn, Cindy Williams. Maybe just more of a.
Cyndi Lauper, Whitney Houston.
A take on how often female actors in this time didn't have as long of a window of being able to act, which is a little sad. And then Peter Cushing was Grand Moff Tarkin. Originally, the role was offered to Christopher Lee.
Really?
So he would eventually come back. Probably a better move in terms of being memorable.
Yeah.
Not that Grand Moff Tarkin is a bad character, but just not as cool as Count Dooku.
No. They would have had to in the sequels still, because I think both actors died.
Oh, so Japanese actor Toshiro Mifune, who was in many Kurosawa movies, was considered to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, which would have been a very interesting, different twist. Maybe it would have served the movie well, as there was a lot of white people in this movie.
No, Yoda's green.
I had aliens and white people.
Yoda's green, you forgot.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a lot of green representation. And Mace Windu eventually.
Yeah, Mace Windu. They got a little bit more diverse in the universe.
Gosh, yeah. That's funny.
I don't know how they have somebody who's the voice of R2D2, but how's that work? How are you did somebody did all those sounds?
Yeah,
use it
live.
That's so weird.
No, I don't think so.
No, okay, so they used the voice on they made
probably that.
Okay, they mixed him through a synthesizer and stuff. So it's like you can barely count him, but
because robots can't scream like that.
Yeah. James Earl Jones was the voice of Darth Vader, and David Prowse was the guy in the suit. So he got some credit there. Apparently, Orson Welles was considered for the voice of Darth Vader, which would have been interesting. He's, of course, known for Citizen Kane, but also for a lot of radio performances, so it would have made sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of the acting, but that's how they got to those decisions. But I guess, if you look back, Mark Hamill maybe could have been, they maybe could have hired somebody who was better. But at this point in time, you're like, Luke Skywalker is Mark Hamill. So there's
been too much progress.
I don't know if you regret that you cast Mark Hamill.
Because I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think I get a little annoyed. People do hate on Mark Hamill's performance a little bit, and I'm like, just it's endearing to an extent. And he is Luke. He embodies him. So I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Now, the reception of the actors onto the original trilogy and the subsequent entries is actually pretty poor. I don't even know if Harrison Ford really watched anything past his last film that he did in Episode 7.
Yeah, and that's not surprising.
I mean, even George Lucas is just like, I've detached myself from these things. So it has kind of become part of the plug and chug machine. So it is unfortunate, but it's also inevitable, like we talked about, and I already explained why. No need to explain again. I was going to ask this. This is kind of just a random insert in here, but what's your favorite character of all the Star Wars characters?
Of all of them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. Oh, that is tough. It might be Han Solo.
Okay. Yeah.
Who's that robot in Rogue One?
BB-8?
No, not BB-8. It was in Rogue One.
Oh, yeah. I forget.
K2SO. He's great. If you're going for a really just off the random character, K2SO is hilarious and really well written. But I think maybe Han. But it's like a mix of Han and Luke, I feel like, because I feel like I like aspects of both of them. And kind of their plots together work really well. I'm not sure I can pick one over the other when you separate them.
Yeah, for sure. I'd have to go with Yoda.
Yoda, that's a great one.
Yeah, I just think he has the most quotable lines. Yeah.
Yeah, Yoda's good. And C-3PO and R2-D2 to the same extent, just fun.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoy when they're there. They don't put. I think they don't have too much of them either.
Sure, that they haven't gone full Jar Jar.
Yeah, yeah. You're going worst characters in Star Wars. Jar Jar Binks.
Man, the poor actor was given a really hard time by all the fans. How toxic the fans are.
Who's it? Finn, and
Yeah, Finn and Rey and them.
Finn just, I felt like they did it. They had a really promising story arc gone awry with
Exactly, with the whole Stormtrooper arc.
Where
That
by
could have
the
been beautiful.
The 9th movie, it was like, this guy is completely obsolete. Yeah.
That
sad.
could have been such a beautiful thing, but no, it did not end up going that way. So, I think another wasted potential thing was Snoke. I think Snoke dying in Episode 8 was pretty tragic to the story overall.
Yeah, because we still don't even know who in the world is Snoke and what. And
I don't know. I have to read the
much,
source material. I have no idea.
I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
I don't have time for that. I don't have time to. Thing is, like, this for you to know all the details in this, you must devote your entire life. It's your life or nothing.
You're right.
If you want to know what's going on.
Yeah. So I have a couple questions I had a couple things written down that we've kind of covered already, so I will not bring those up again. But one random question that I had from rewatching this was, so Yoda and Ben Kenobi both wait or don't tell Luke that Darth Vader is his father. So why do you think they withhold that information? That was something that and Ben's like trying to justify it in the last movie, like why he didn't. And he was like, I didn't really lie to you. I was like, so why do you? Yoda insinuated he was like, you weren't ready for the burden, but I was like, I don't know that was putting him in a better situation.
I don't know. I think because Yoda was surprised that Darth told him, right? Vader told him.
Yeah.
So I think Yoda and maybe Ben as well were trying to keep that from him so that he could defeat his dad without knowing it and then could find out after. Because he was like, yeah, we told you the truth, but it's just from a different perspective, and perspectives are actually what truth is, which is actually pretty anti-Jedi in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe the Jedis were a little bit more manipulative. That's why it didn't seem as pure.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were manipulating Luke. That's what I want to get at. Like if they were completely straight up with him, they would just tell him, this is what you're going into.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels like a little foolish to not tell him, because like if they know he's being recruited to the dark side, it's a pretty convincing, like that's one of the biggest things that Darth Vader has in his bag to pull out, is that like we're related. This is your destiny to rule as father and son. So I don't really understand the reasoning behind why they withheld.
Well, I'm not even sure if the Emperor knew that Darth told him that he was his father. Did he?
The Emperor may not have known.
Because the Emperor didn't know that Darth already threatened the Emperor by saying that we could rule the galaxy as father and son.
Yeah, he didn't know that.
So at the very least, he didn't know that. So I'm not sure if the Emperor knew. So I'm not sure. I think Darth Vader and Luke were the only ones that knew about that until Luke told Yoda. But right. I think that Ben and Yoda didn't tell him because they were afraid that his emotions would get a hold of him. I think he had already tried to storm out and fight Darth Vader. And then adding, if Yoda were to say also, you're about to storm off, and I don't think you should storm off. He says this in The Empire Strikes Back, right? He's like, you shouldn't go now. But Luke's like, no, I have to go save my friends. He's like, you are not ready to fight Vader. If Yoda were to add, also, he's your father, then I think Luke would have, it would have been a lot worse. I think that's my headcanon.
Okay. Yeah, I could maybe see it. I think it's just hard for me to, imagine the all good Jedi being, manipulative to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's, it's difficult because I know it's the argument is, well, it's for the greater good, but it's almost like the white lie for a better reason makes lying okay kind of thing.
Well, it's not necessarily good or evil. I think it's light and dark, which is
right.
different.
You're right. It is light and dark, and it's like a cosmic battle between the two. Mm-hmm. It can't necessarily be squeezed into the same moral system that maybe.
And they don't actually call it the light side.
You're right. They don't.
So it's just the dark side and using the Force or whatever. I have no idea.
Not with the dark side.
Yeah.
You're right. They don't usually say light side. Maybe because that doesn't sound as cool.
I just think there was some lack of wisdom in not telling Luke before all these events transpired, or there was time that took place between these films. The Force Ghost could have came and told him, right?
Yeah, you think.
So Ben could have told him. Yoda could have told him. There was time for him to reason out what it looks like for him to defeat his father and not be succumbed to the dark side in the meantime.
And then there was this question that I had that I think there's been videos made on it, and I don't know that I've watched any of them, but I've always been kind of curious about, because people will try to make arguments about everything. But was the Empire, the Imperial Empire, were they actually in the right? How much, is the Rebel Alliance as good as we think it is maybe more of the question. I think you can say that the Empire basically, this is where the movie is like very simplistic, because they're basically like, we're bad, like we're using the dark side of the Force. So they're basically admitting they're evil.
Yeah.
They're like bad guys who are like, we are bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
You find in real life, a lot of the villains in real life don't admit to being villains, right? They have some sort of justification for what they're doing.
Yeah.
However, however, whatever mental barriers they have to go over to justify those things, they find a way to do it. Maybe some people like know that they're doing something bad, or like admit to it, but a lot of people try to hide that information from themselves. In this movie, it's like, no, we know we're bad, but like, is the Rebel Alliance, like, we don't have much background on them. Like, is it possible that they're like,
I don't know,
not looking out for the best interest of the galaxy, by being rebels?
Ben, when we look at institutions, no, it really is probably person by person. I think, well, what is the Empire's plan?
Well, here's what Vader said to Luke. He said, we can rule the Empire and bring peace to the galaxy
by destroying planets.
Yeah, you're right. You can't really justify that. But that was a rebel planet that had stepped out of line from the Empire.
But is that peace?
Well, it's peace because nobody will step out of line anymore.
But is it?
You're
is
right.
it peace in the?
But
like, I want you to argue that. Is it peace in the general sense? Like the galaxy has peace between itself, or is it peace between the Empire and the galaxy?
It's like, we had to blow up this planet to end war. It's kind of like we dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Oh, wow. Wow, we just went there. Okay.
I mean, we have our own
We did just review Oppenheimer.
We have our own history in the U.S. of using this very same strategy.
Okay.
Now, okay. So, did the Rebel Alliance have their bombing of Pearl Harbor? I have no idea. So, and I'm kind of isolating this from whatever happened in the original trilogy. Like, I'm thinking only original trilogy. Not all. Don't add in.
So
all
Nazi
the
Germany were the rebels in this instance.
No, Nazi Germany was not the rebels. They would have been. No, wait. Maybe they were the rebels though.
In your analogy, Nazi Germany was Luke Skywalker, and the Axis powers were the Emperor, Darth Vader, and the Death Star.
No, I was not comparing the entire World War II. I was simply saying they blew up Andor, which killed a lot of people, and the U.S. also dropped 2 bombs in Japan and killed like a bunch of people.
Gotcha. So just don't take the analogy too far. Okay.
Yeah, just don't take it too far.
Okay.
Because I'm only going to stretch it to the point where it's convenient for my argument.
Okay, all right.
So
sounds good. You sound like a... Never mind. Yeah.
Like a politician.
Maybe, yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I think to some extent, lawlessness in the galaxy has proven to, and this is just a fictional thing, has proven to be bad.
Yeah.
So I think some order is needed, but maybe the best way to keep the order is through the Jedi Order.
True. Now, the thing is, the Imperial, it was ruled, there's an empire, it seems like he's all powerful, but they do have a Senate. So there's a lot of questions I have about the structure. You could say it's like a puppet Senate.
So there are checks and balances.
Yeah. So it's like not completely
Is it democratic?
I don't say it's democratic.
There are elected officials that meet and convene?
Yeah, there's elected officials that convene, so it's kind of democratic. I mean, he can't rule this galaxy by himself without a Senate.
This is actually what happened. No, the Senate was in the prequels, I thought.
Yeah, but...
Then the Emperor takes over the Senate.
Yeah, he takes over the Senate. He's the Emperor.
So the Empire is above the Senate. He goes
from being the Chancellor to the Emperor. So he's above the Senate. He can do whatever he wants. But I think for day-to-day operations of the galaxy or whatever, whoever's in this, he has to have a Senate.
But he still has overarching reach to do whatever he wants.
Something. Now, you have to question, why did they have to build a Death Star? I think that's where the argument kind of falls apart.
Maybe that's the weapon.
It's like they are saying they're trying to bring peace to the galaxy and order. That's a lot of nationalistic groups love to say that they're bringing order and peace. That's their like argument. You just have to go through the period of war to get to the point where we're going to say we have peace.
Yeah.
But then they're also building a massive thing just in case.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, they plan to use it because
they did use it.
I mean, they tried twice. First one was destroyed. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ben.
Yeah, so I think I kind of stymied my own position there.
Yeah, you're right. But also, there is an element of the rebels probably weren't all that good too, because the rebels are destroying any chance of order that the galaxy has. Because if their galaxy is going to get order, it's going to be by force.
Yeah.
Because you have all these smuggler nations in the Outer Rim and these things like that crime occurs in some horrible, horrible places, like Mos Eisley exist. But I think the way that in which they do it, building a Death Star, is not the way to go about. Obviously, like I'm saying obvious things, but it's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
There has to be a more efficient.
I think you're right about the rebels, though. I think it's very difficult for a rebellion to like turn out to be a really good thing. Yeah. Because in its nature, you have a plan for like what you're trying to stop, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have a plan for what you're going to do once you stop the thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's what happens to a lot of rebellions, right? I mean, the American Revolution, as our history has taught to us like so much, like we know so much about it, was unique because it was like there was a lot of intellectual things that occurred, and writing and structure and arguments that happened before, any sort of actual fighting happened. So that there was an idea of what was going to happen. Yes. When, it was an independent nation. But then look, just a few short years later at the French Revolution, it was a pretty well executed rebellion. Like they were able to overthrow the emperor and the ruling class. But then, okay, what do we do now? Mm-hmm. That's the problem with rebellion, and that's why people are critical of like how our military goes in and supports rebellions, because you're not necessarily always supporting people who are better than they appear better at the time than whoever's ruling, because anything appears better than the rulers of some of the places that are very oppressive. But then there's not always a plan, and it is easier to make decisions when you just got one guy making the decisions. Yeah. So it concentrates power. The things happen faster. But then it's harder for people to give up that power.
Although the death toll is high in rebellions, and although that it is extremely difficult mentally and physically, and a lot of resources are used in that time of the rebellion, the harder part is the rebuilding. Yes. And figuring out what to do after.
Yeah, and I get some rebellions are necessary. I mean, it's like I don't know whether you could say necessary, but it's like they almost have to happen. I don't know. I mean, some countries have been in civil war for like hundreds of years. They've never really been out of the rebellion stage. Mm-hmm. There's always just a rebellion and a not rebellion. Yeah. So
I think we've solved what this movie represents, huh?
Yeah. I mean, from a political standpoint.
Sure. No.
What does it represent? Like not. I'm trying to think what
not political. Nothing
like not
exists out of the political realm, Ben. We've learned
you're
that.
right. You're right. Okay, fair enough. Like from a personal I mean, we said hero's journey. It's like the personal achievement, the change of Han, Leia, Luke. They're different people by the end. So
I also think it's the restoration of family.
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. That's why I really like it.
And redemption and forgiveness too, with Darth Vader's arc.
Yeah, like even though he does become like probably one of the most evil people in the universe, he is redeemed at the end. Right? It's like St. Paul. It's pretty much the same exact thing, right? Yeah. So I think that's a great aspect of it.
Like you said, he at the end of the day, he kind of does save the universe. Darth Vader.
Sort of, yeah.
And Luke combined.
In an odd way, because he just picks up the Emperor and just throws him down, and the Emperor does nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe don't give him too much credit, but he did something. Yeah. It maybe didn't. It doesn't. I mean, it's not equal this for that. You did this bad thing and this good thing. It's not like we're going by the weights.
Well, Star Wars almost did, because when Luke cut off Darth Vader's hand, he looks at his own hand and kind of was like hand for hand. So
you're right. So I think Star Wars is much more of a balanced thing than
yin yang,
other perspectives.
Yeah, it's definitely Eastern mysticism. But the midichlorians are actually what matters.
Oh my! I was telling somebody I was telling my friends I was watching Star Wars. Somebody mentioned something about the midichlorians. I was like, this is where Star Wars got ruined for me. Mm-hmm. I just like the Force was cooler when there weren't like little things in your body that like there wasn't a
scientific.
It went a very sciencey route from a movie that was supposed to be it just is confusing. I mean, that's the original. The prequel trilogy's biggest fault is it is like a scientific breakdown of Star Wars, and
it really does get into cloning and everything like that. Kind of goes into this from the science fiction realm to the science realm.
It's not fiction. I mean, mysticism, I guess you would say, is almost not really science fiction.
Yeah.
It's just like fantasy. Yeah, fantasy.
Sure.
A lot of fantasy has like magic and stuff that it's like you're not explaining it with a scientific like midichlorians or anything. It's just this happens because of magic.
Yeah.
It's vague. It's not. There's no answers for it.
And that's another example of them adding something and trying to fix something that wasn't broken.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Prime example, I would say.
Yeah.
Prime example.
That might be.
Nobody was asking for midichlorians to be explained.
Is that a worse addition than Jar Jar Binks?
I think subtly, maybe yes.
Okay.
I think overtly, Jar Jar Binks was more damaging.
You can ignore Jar Jar Binks. You can't ignore midichlorians.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, Jar Jar Binks is cheesy, like really cheesy. But Star Wars has always been cheesy, so maybe you can forgive it to an extent.
Okay.
Like maybe it was cheesy in like the wrong ways that people didn't like.
Sure.
But midichlorians, that like changes the fabric of how you thought of this
it's
thing.
more
working.
integral to the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as the Skywalker saga kind of goes from generation to generation, where you have Anakin and just kind of we don't know who his father was, right? The Force, almost like Mary in the inception of Jesus.
It is weird. It's almost like Anakin is like
he doesn't have a father.
Yeah.
And Anakin is incepted by the Force.
Had sex with Anakin's mom.
Had coitus.
Yep.
And then they eventually give birth to Anakin, and Anakin's midichlorian count is high apparently, which is like a virus.
Whatever the Force is has a high midichlorian count, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. I bet you...
It's like... Never mind. I was going to say... never mind.
Never mind. All right. Try to remember it for later. But the Force itself is kind of injected in an almost divine way into
in a divine
Anakin.
But very literal sense.
Yeah, because it's literally bugs.
Yeah.
So bugs have infested Anakin.
Yeah, it's like they're not even it's like microorganisms. Like yeah, they're not. It's so weird.
But anyway, that's the first generation. He meets Padme. You know, he eventually turns evil and destroys everything he's built up on the path of the light, and becomes on the dark side. Which then he aids the top most evil guy ever, and then his son. He doesn't really know that his son and her twin is born, and. His twin, sorry. And they go and are spread out. They grow up. They finally meet with their father. He dies. They take over the Jedi Order. And then Leia eventually has a kid who is also evil. And it's just like this cycle of like Skywalker after Skywalker. So it goes Anakin to Luke to Kylo. And this... And obviously Rey is the main character of the next saga, who's actually a descendant of Palpatine, which is also a weird twist. And I'm not really sure what happened in the in-between generation between Rey and Palpatine. These generations kind of show like this big overarching story that the universe is putting its focus on this family, this Skywalker family, right? The Force has chosen this family, right? From the inception of Anakin, right? The Force incepted his mother. And... to the close of the Skywalker saga with Rey kind of turning Kylo Ren back to the light. It shows like the temptation for the Skywalkers is very high because their powers are very high, right? Where Anakin, the first generation, and Kylo, the third generation, spent some time on the dark side, but eventually are redeemed. And Luke never really goes that far. He's in the middle generation. But it's like, the high midichlorian count also comes with the cost of being tempted and even spending time in the dark side. But there's always redemption for the Skywalkers. And I wonder if, moving on, if there will be any other Skywalkers that have redemption or go to the dark side.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There's a point when Luke and Vader are fighting where Vader says something, I forget what he says, but it's very, like, Luke is upset about it. I think he says something about Leia turning to the dark side.
Yeah.
And then he like reacts very strongly and it's like overpowering him, cuts off his hand. At that point, was he using the dark side of the Force?
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like it was like he started down the road and then caught himself.
And then
almost.
He could have killed his
turned back
father
around.
and caught himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in the same way, when he has that realization, goes back to the light, his father saw that, and his father emulates that.
True.
So,
just took him a few more years.
Yeah. So the Skywalkers have been chosen by the Force to be really on the brink of light or dark side, but to have the ultimate power. And I wonder, this is
They're
just
like
my
the
theory.
tipping point.
This is my theory. The reason that the Skywalkers are either really bad or really good and are kind of in the mix in between is because the Force chose a family to balance itself out on the light and the dark side. It couldn't just choose a family that would only be on the light side. It couldn't just choose a family that's only on the dark side. It chose a family that would give an equal or a pretty close amount of light and dark side, so that it itself could be balanced, yin yang. That's my theory. I think that's what the Skywalker saga is about. I don't think it's about anything but the Force. I think the Force controls all and ends all. There are so many parallels, even to Christianity, to Eastern mysticism, to Kurosawa.
Yeah, Kurosawa movies.
It's funny that he's on the pedestal with them, with religion.
I mean, yeah. I guess he is. He represents whatever. I honestly don't even know what Kurosawa's like religious representation would even be, but he was obviously extremely influential on these movies.
Yeah,
man.
So that's the Skywalker saga in a nutshell. The Force chooses a family to balance itself out.
I feel like we haven't even discussed the fact that people call this a space opera. That's like a term you hear all the time about Star Wars.
Like a soap opera kind of, but
Yeah.
space opera.
Yeah, it's like
It just keeps going.
Wikipedia says a space opera is a subgenre of science fiction that emphasizes space warfare with use of melodramatic, risk-taking space adventures, relationship, and chivalric romance, like chivalry.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. It's like, yeah, it's a soap
Star
opera.
Trek would be another example.
So, yeah, Flash Gordon was that.
Yeah.
Is what they're saying.
Flash.
So, yeah, I think space opera is an apt term for it, and it's probably the greatest one that there's been.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to think was just kind of the world building of this franchise. Just like all of the different places that are so recognizable to us today, right? If we think of Two Suns, the first thing we think of is Tatooine. And a few examples of the places we got to visit in this original trilogy are Tatooine, Yavin 4, which is the first rebel base in that forest planet, and then Hoth, where the second rebel base was, Dagobah, where Yoda was, Bespin, where Cloud City kind of harbored in the clouds up there, Endor, the Death Star, Alderaan kind of has like a cameo, and then there are some other cameos as well.
Coruscant has a cameo in the remastered version.
Yeah, and Naboo as well.
Oh, yeah.
So where Jar Jar's from.
Yeah. So one thing that always kind of confused me about the world building of Star Wars, but I'm sure there might actually be like a good answer, is that like every planet is like one ecosystem. But is that just like the reality that...
That's a good point.
No, I'm just curious.
I'm wondering if these planets are smaller.
Yeah. Like, is it like relative to their distance to whatever the star they're orbiting? It just makes sense for the whole planet to be woods.
Well, I think
But,
we
like,
see that
every
with
planet
Uranus
yeah.
and stuff like that. But there are different atmospheres and temperatures and conditions of the planets.
All the planets they go to support life to an extent.
They're all in the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
Fermi's paradox is a sham, according to this universe.
Yeah, because isn't like I just heard Joe Rogan talking about this. Like the nearest planet in the Goldilocks zone is like 14 light years away from us.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's a bunch of them in the same galaxy in this universe.
Yep. So there are conditions that must be met for life to exist according to our
Human
scientific
life,
calculations.
right?
No, life.
Life in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because all life is water-based.
Yeah. You'd have to come up with a different definition of life if you were to say something else. Yeah.
Exactly. Organic life is what we know to be life.
Yeah.
So if there's another type of life out there, it has not been discovered. And we don't know the mechanics of it. We can't even comprehend how it would work.
Yeah, because everything that we've researched is this form of life.
Exactly.
That we know.
We've learned from the base knowledge of our own bodies. We just look at ourselves in the mirror and go, oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And modern medicines come from really just dissecting ourselves.
Yeah. So
not from anything cool we've created.
Having just like different kind of ecosystems on the same planet. That doesn't happen in Star Wars. It's like this planet's the desert planet. This planet's and obviously it was easier to do it that way, so it makes sense. But the forest planet, the jungle planet, the city planet,
snowy.
Although Coruscant is like half an ice cap, I guess.
Oh, is it?
If you look at
I didn't know that.
the expanded, the encyclopedias and stuff.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. And maybe that's just so like we can distinguish the planets from one another as well.
To an extent that.
Like Tatooine will always be the desert one. Like it's just Tatooine out here,
Yeah, and they make it look like there's other desert planets in Star Wars, I think, but you can always tell it's Tatooine.
Oh yeah.
So that's the cool thing about
And
it.
they always put the two suns.
The architecture of the two suns, but even the sand looks a certain way.
Maybe.
Kind of kidding about that. Actually, do they go to that many other desert planets though? I don't know.
I don't know. Sahara.
Sahara Desert.
But yeah, even Jabba's palace is in Tatooine, so you're right. So a lot of it, I mean, many of the shows take place on Tatooine too, like Boba Fett. So.
Arguably, Tatooine is the planet of Star Wars, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'd say that.
It represents. It's very low class.
Well, that's where
And
Anakin's
it's on
from.
the fringes of the and Skywalkers are
Mhm.
rooted in Tatooine,
Mhm.
which is interesting because it's like a very humble place to be from, and
Yeah.
obviously he was like in slavery when they met him, so there's like that aspect of it.
Mhm.
It's like a. Not only is it a unknown to known force, like learn how to use the force, but also like a rags to riches story.
Mhm.
Or rags or like relative obscurity to being a hero kind of arc.
Unknown to known. Sure.
And, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's definitely an aspect of it. I think a cool thing about Tatooine, though, because I think even Rey's from there, right?
Yep.
But the only Skywalker or Solo, whatever. I know Ben takes the last name of Ben Solo. Is he from Tatooine? Or was he? I don't know. I don't remember where Leia.
Ben Solo.
Yeah, I don't remember where
I don't
Leia
think
and
so.
Han raised him.
I think they're on a different planet.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or just floating around,
Yeah, in space, fighting battles all day.
lost in space.
Oh wait, but Ben did study under Luke for a while.
Yeah, but I forget where that was at. There was
Yeah,
like
I
a
can't
place.
remember. There was a Jedi Order somewhere. I wonder if it was. Yeah, I don't remember. But and then in the new film, there's going to be a new film where Rey actually continues the Jedi Order. Apparently, there can only be like one Jedi at a time in all of the movies that we've seen.
So now they're gonna have they don't have the rule of the twos anymore. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm still learning
in the
what that
first
means.
movie there is Obi-Wan and Yoda, and then so there's two Jedi, but Obi-Wan dies pretty soon. So then there's one Jedi, and then there's like a transitional period between Yoda to Luke. So like there's a very brief period. There's two Jedi.
Yeah.
I think now with the other canon and stuff, there might be like Ahsoka might still be alive. Like there's like random stuff. Like some people might have escaped.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of controversy. Maybe there was a couple others, but it doesn't matter. It's not inconsequential to the Skywalker
The
saga. 'cause
Force wasn't
They
concentrated
were
in
so
them.
far removed from wherever that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other good things that have come subsequently since the original trilogy? I would say just The Mandalorian season 1 and Andor. That is it for me.
You're talking about like, I like Rogue One.
Oh, Rogue One. I forgot. That might be the best thing that's come since the sequels.
Yeah,
In
and
my
I read the
opinion.
book before. It's like pretty interesting.
So you were into reading the books?
I'm just that one.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, I read
Okay.
that one. I think my brother read it too, and he recommended it, and I liked it. It's like a very easy book to read too. So
Okay.
I was trying to think, like, what things do you think wouldn't exist without Star Wars?
Ooh, Spaceballs.
Well, yeah. The immediate first thing that comes out after that would be a parody. So, yeah,
Mhm.
Spaceballs. I mean,
Many of the space opera genre.
yeah. I think maybe this might be a loose. Do you think comic book movies would have been seen as a viable thing without Star Wars?
No.
Because they're nerdy.
Or it would have come up later.
Yeah.
Because I think
That took them a while before they still made like comic book movies.
Star Wars honestly made being a nerd mainstream.
Yeah, you're right. That is something I thought about. I don't think it was right away that this happened. I think over time this happened
Mhm.
because it was like kids who like grew up with Star Wars being super important to them with the action figures and everything.
Mhm.
Then they got a second round of it with the prequel trilogy, so everyone was excited. So and then it became socially acceptable to just be like, I'm super into Star Wars, like
Mhm.
science fiction.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have to be like I'm weird and isolated anymore. So we've never really grown up in an era where you weren't allowed to like Star Wars
Yeah.
and be in the cool crowd.
Yeah.
Maybe now you wouldn't like advertise it to everyone, but
No.
you can make it your thing. You can be a nerd essentially.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
can
being
start
a
a
nerd
movie
is the
podcast.
norm now.
You can start a podcast about movies.
Most people are like engaged pretty heavily into some type of franchise these days.
Yeah. Or people are nerds in lots of different ways. I mean, people who like really follow sports, like really follow and like follow the intricacies of the stats, and you're like, oh, these people are nerds. Like they're just nerds for sports.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's almost like everyone has to have their thing that they're like obsessive about.
Exactly.
It's just people like box certain things into being, oh, this is cooler to be a nerd about.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're actually just a nerd.
Yeah. And being a fan of the newer Star Wars things kind of makes it seem like you're not a true Star Wars fan too. There's kind of this dividing of the fan base.
Yeah.
So Disney has unsuccessfully had success in trying to divide the fan base. Yeah.
They've made it an elitism model like everything else is.
They have. There are rankings within the Star Wars culture. This is how toxic it is.
This is like, it's like movies. It's like us trying to ascend the movie ladder, where it's like, oh yeah, actually these movies we said were good, actually we don't think there's. Our first episode, I talked about Inception. I don't know, we both talked about Inception like it was the greatest movie.
Really?
Like we both said like really positive things about Inception.
Yeah, but I've never loved Inception. Even but like, since I first watched it.
It might have been more me, but you said something positive about it. You said something about Inception being complicated. Like you're like, oh, it's not as complicated as Inception.
It's not. What was it? Good Time? Yeah, it's definitely not.
No, but we talked. That was our frame of reference for what movie was complicated.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So now we've watched more movies. We have realized that Inception's actually not really that complicated, and that there's other movies that are far more complicated than Inception's, like in Inland Empire. So by Memento, episode 99, we were talking about how we don't necessarily not like Inception, but we have this like. We've become a little bit more pretentious about things, which can take fun out of stuff for people, but it can also be. I've argued over many episodes that being pretentious to a healthy degree, maybe not to an unhealthy extent, can add to the fun.
Yeah.
And the sort of friendly banter that can come along. You just have to be careful how far you take it.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And with which people you're bantering with and talking about, because people will go on the internet and say all kinds of stuff because they can't see people's faces, and this happens not just within movies but anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you have to realize these people aren't your friends. They're not going to take what you're saying in the same way that your friends might take it, where they realize that like you're just trying to have fun with them, even though you're trying to act like you're in a more elite model of consuming art, which is already kind of a strange concept to begin with. But you do learn there are levels to I mean, there is levels to. I would argue there are levels to art,
mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean you have to like the higher levels of art or whatever.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean you have to. That has to be your thing.
Speaking of levels, this is something I thought as we were watching it. Will there be a Star Wars movie where there is almost the idea or theme of of liberating the droids?
Maybe. I feel like it's already kind of referenced subtly throughout Star Wars.
Really?
That droids are like lower class individuals.
Oh yeah.
And well, it definitely is.
Well, they are.
And that like that's not necessarily a good thing. It's like, but you're right. I mean, they still, even though it's like you have a good owner or a bad owner. But the weird thing about droids, you can literally just wipe their brain. But they also added the human element to droids. Like certain droids, not all droids are the same. Some droids don't have a personality. People program the personality into the droid, so it's kind of a dumb argument for the.
Do you think humans will get to a point where droids have rights?
I mean, people are already talking about it. I feel like because we're with AI, that's the hot button topic. Like we're trying to make things that do have personality, and as soon as what is it called? Anthropomorphism? Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. So as soon as you anthropomorphize robots, you're going to start to like place emotions onto them.
We already have done that with animals.
Yes, we have. You're right, we have.
So I'm wondering, and animals have increased their rights.
Huge animal right activists.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. I mean, it probably will happen then, yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, will it get so sad to where the definition of life is just we think it's alive?
Is it already that?
For many, sure. I don't think everybody's there yet.
I think the definition of life right now is just kind of like
the consensus
convenience, or like
oh yeah,
things are life when it's convenient for us to be life.
That is the consensus of the day. You're very right in that. I'm thinking specifically between different species.
Yeah, Yeah, I think maybe we'll get to the point where it's like, I don't know. But maybe I always wonder, though, people talk like everything's going in one direction, but I always wonder whether there'll be like swing backs, like things swing forward and they swing back sometimes. But it feels like with technology, it's very much just a swing forward. It's not really like it's like there's no.
Do you think someone said,
really like
"Oh, these phones and computers, they're just a fad. They'll swing back"?
They're right. People probably said that,
Yeah.
but they're not right. They're not right. I mean, they are kind of right to the extent that computers won't always be relevant. Like, at some point, computers will be obsolete because something else will replace it.
Yeah, Neuralink.
But something that's more scary than a computer would have been to that person would be the thing that's replacing it.
Would you get the Neuralink chip?
Not right now, no.
I mean, not now. If it was flawless.
It gets harder and harder when more people would have it. It's more like part of life. It just feels like you're giving over yourself.
Do you think we get to a point where
for-
they force the Neuralink chip like the vaccine?
Maybe. I think that will be how it comes out. I think it will be. There will be you get the Neuralink, and then there'll be a bunch of people who are like, it'll be like vaccine rights. I mean, it will be like that.
It's for the health of others. Get the Neuralink.
Yeah.
Your stupidity is infectious.
Yeah, it will be. And then, but I think it'll have a much greater financial impact on the people who refuse than not getting the vaccine did.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe some
not
people lost their
getting the
jobs.
You're right. Some people did lose their jobs. So
Yeah.
but I think now you can get a job again. So
Okay.
it was a couple of years impact could mean a lot for some people.
Yeah.
But I think Neuralink, that's something that changes. Like COVID changed the world, but now the world is slowly. There's certain things that can't change back, I guess, but things are slowly going back to kind of like how they were.
Mm-hmm.
But Neuralink, things don't go back. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
That's the difference.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's my projection.
It would just be more interesting than TV
Yeah.
to see that play out. Our eyes would be on the news again, just like beginning of 2020. I don't want to say the C word because then we'll have to learn more about C19, you know?
I already said it.
Oh, really?
Will it be on? It'll be so interesting.
I think it's like there's like a limit of like how much.
I feel like we've mentioned it before and we never got flagged.
Or maybe.
That would be so funny if we did that.
I wonder
For
like
our
what the
100th
limit
episode,
is. Yeah.
It's like flagged.
They get
It
the
was, like,
vaccine conspiracy
it's,
theories
like,
at the end.
Not even during COVID, really. I said it again. Not during the C word.
Yeah. But
I like want to get us flagged.
yeah, actually, that's funny that you mentioned it though, because that's actually when we started the podcast. Was right when all that started.
Would the podcast have even? It might not have started without that.
Was it during that?
It was during that.
Did we start after? It's after March of 2020.
Yeah, we did. It was.
Okay.
We started in August of 2020.
Oh, it's kind of late. We were late to the game, man.
We were late to the game. I started watching movies in COVID because we were just home.
That's right. That's
so
right.
that was a big impact for me personally.
Things have
I watched
changed.
like Goodfellas and Taxi Driver and stuff
Yeah.
because we were just at home. We met for Bible class like once a week,
That's right.
and we had these little write-ups I would write about. Like I remember writing about like how I was listening to the Meat Puppets and like weird. I would try to make like these obscure bands. I was like,
And our
in
teacher
my
would be like,
band
"All
of the
right,
week." He's like, okay,
great.
like Meat Puppets.
Just
yeah.
go home."
I still do that in my classes. I'll still write about random stuff that nobody cares about.
That was an
Much as I
interesting
can.
time. That was when we had nothing going on. It was nice.
Yeah.
Just go to the coffee shop.
Yeah, literally that whole first semester of college, like we had so much time to hang out because there was no events going on
Mm-hmm.
extra, and we were transitioning anyway from high school, so our responsibilities weren't as high as they've been later in college.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was such an interesting time.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing. I wish we could like interview 3 years ago. Our versions.
Would we be proud of ourselves where like what we've done? I mean, I don't think we've necessarily gained a whole ton of traction in terms of like building a big audience, but I think truthfully I don't think we would like love to have a big audience, but if it was why we were doing it, we would have quit already.
True.
So that's what
Well,
I'm trying
our
to
peak
say.
is yet to come.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Our peak is yet to come.
Yeah.
And it's like that meme of the guy who's like, if you quit gambling now, like 90% of gamblers quit right before they're gonna hit it big. That's us. Like 10 years from now, we're still gonna be chipping away. We're gonna find that diamond mine.
Yeah. Well, I was
Yeah.
just thinking. I mean, we had talked about it earlier, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago. But will it take another 3 years for another 100 episodes?
Very likely, yes. I can't.
I think you're right.
Our lives are not necessarily set to slow down to the point that it will be like easier to record.
True.
We might have to like re-strategize how we do things.
True.
Which is not bad. I think. Well, we have re-strategized how we done thing like a bunch of times in the first 100 episodes.
Yeah.
I think that's what you learn. I mean, if you stay stagnant and always just do the same thing, personally, you probably just kind of grow bored of it if you do that too.
Sure.
But also, like, that's kind of how creative things go. You just like are trial and erroring it until something hits.
I love that you use that as a verb. I think my past would be somewhat proud, somewhat disappointed in general. For the podcast, proud.
For the podcast?
Yeah, I think I'd be proud. I'd be like, 100 episodes, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's how I think about it. I'm like, on one sense, I would be like, I've been maybe had like super high aspirations. Been like, man, we didn't do this or that. But on the other hand, we made it to 100 episodes. I mean, not most people who make podcasts don't make it to 100. I don't mean to pat ourselves on the back too much, but most people don't make it to 100.
No.
It's like most podcasts end within the first 10 episodes.
This is proof that we're not doing it for the numbers.
Exactly.
That we've gone this long without being successful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it takes a certain type of person to be able to do something with like and get no credit for
and
it.
we're that person.
We're that type of person.
Yeah, that's us.
And I always love talking with people about it because they immediately I think a lot of people don't really understand the like why you would want to do it without it. But I think for somebody who is like really interested in like researching things and like kind of stimulating your mind to like try to figure out ways to talk about them or understand them, like it's a lot easier. It's kind of like, you know how there used to be philosophers and they just like kind of walk around and talk about their theories on life. That's what podcasting is, kind of.
Yeah, like the dialogues of
Except
Socrates.
for everyone can do it. And I mean, there's negatives to podcasting. Like I mean, sometimes I'm thankful to not be famous or to never have gone viral, because some people go viral, but it's because they're just sound like really stupid.
True.
Like, you watch their like how these 3 people bought mics and they're just like it's happening too early for them. They need to work out, or they don't really have anything to add. And it's also given. I mean, there's so many people who I don't even know they have podcasts. They just like record themselves like in front of a microphone and release clips on like reels and stuff. They're like it's like a scam artists and con artists. They just thrive in the environment of and they're just like
Andrew Tate.
Just saying, yeah, Andrew Tate, like that sort of brand of person. People who are even, I would say, maybe not worse than Andrew Tate in some ways. Like Andrew Tate has like actually done actions that I can say, okay, that's reprehensible. That's like really bad. Like things that he's actually done outside of what he's said. But there's some people who just say stuff that are just like blatantly manipulative and lies, and it's just so annoying. So you hope you're like not that person.
But the worst would be to be boring, as you said.
Yeah. I think we've gotten more interesting over time, but hopefully in 100 episodes we'll be even more interesting. That's the hope.
Yeah, we'll be relating all of our movies to patient experiences.
Yeah, exactly. I mean the reality is, I keep saying the reality is.
Yep. The truth is, we'll just be more and more in that world than we are now as time goes on. And everything will be, I mean, the other night I had worked a couple of shifts at the hospital and I was trying to go to sleep, and like everything was the hospital in my head for that moment when I was trying to go to sleep. It's like your life becomes it. And then you snap out of it and you're back to reality. It's funny. Then you're right back in the next day.
Yep. Next day, right back in it.
Mm-hmm. You just
and then when you get your time off, you separate yourself completely from it. It's kind of nice.
And you just become desensitized. You go to the mall and see someone have a heart attack. You're like, all right, that's just see that every day. Truthfully, you just become desensitized. I mean, if you work at the ICU or something like that.
You're like, yep, that happens to people.
Yep. But I think we'll make it hopefully another 100 episodes. I hope we keep going as long as as long as
Until
possible.
we both die.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's
not.
always been my goal. I've never had I mean, there might be like just like logistically more difficult, but with the internet that we're blessed with, there's lots of ways to keep things going, even without being physically together. So
true. Yeah, Bernie Rao is a great experience of that, or an example of that.
Yeah, we'd have to maybe learn some more technical things, but
yeah, he kind of did all the work that day.
I probably know. Yeah, he did actually. I probably know more technical things than I did, but I still have a lot to learn. My goal for the podcast is honestly not even to make money myself. It's just to like have enough money to be able to pay someone to like do all of the editing and all of the everything.
A
producer. And we just sit here and talk.
One day we're gonna hire David back.
Yeah.
And it'll be his full-time job.
It'll be his full-time job. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, I don't even have to be making money on it.
Yeah.
It can be all David.
Yeah. That's true. That would be nice. Yeah. But until then, what are we at for time?
We're not quite at the 3.5 hour mark, but we're at 2:15. I mean,
okay. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, 3.5 hours. It's gonna be, or 3 hours and 40 minutes. I think it was. That's gonna be hard to top.
That was our Infinity War Endgame.
Yeah.
And that was going scene by scene.
But yeah, we were one scene by scene.
And we took a bathroom break.
Yeah, we did.
And a food break, actually.
We we recorded a whole other podcast that day too. Yeah.
On top of the 3 hour.
Yeah, we did episode 49 that day. I don't know how we did that. Sitting here right now, I'm like,
which one was that?
It was
the lobster? How do I remember that? Okay.
Yeah, so we took the food break in between those.
So we recorded the lobster for an hour.
Yeah.
And then we did 3 hour and 40 minutes.
So we did about 5 hours of podcasting that day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We had a lot of energy back then.
We did. We had a lot of stamina.
The kids take it out of us these days.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Don't worry, none of us are pregnant.
No.
Hopefully one day. What are the predictions by another 100 episodes?
How many kids between us?
Well, that's the question you're asking. How many kids?
Okay. We should do some predictions for what our lives will look like in 100 years. Okay. So
not 100 years.
100 years. 100 episodes.
I was about to say.
So 100 episodes from now, are you an MD or are you still in school?
Hopefully, I'm still in school because we said 3 years, right?
We said 3 years. So yeah,
we still got 4.5 years till that's done.
Yep. All right, you got one for me?
That was stupid. Do a different one.
Yeah, that one was like the easiest one.
Yeah.
All right. 100 episodes from now, are you married?
Hopefully in 3 years.
Hopefully in 3 years. Okay.
I would say that's
a low ball for me because I have a wedding.
Because you have a wedding in 5 months.
Yeah.
I actually think I could confidently say yes if it works out.
Yeah.
And I think anybody else would agree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would make sense. That was another. I don't know. Maybe this is harder than I thought it was gonna be.
Are you gonna be alive?
Are you gonna be alive? Yeah, because those are both like not very hard ones.
Do you have a child?
I'm gonna say yes.
Wow.
I'm gonna say yes.
That's so cute. Little Timmy. Can't wait.
I think 3 years. Yeah, I think the timeline could work out for that one. Just thinking.
Little Timmy.
Will you have directed a movie in 3 years?
Probably not, because I'll be in the throes of medical school unless I do one in the summer before.
Yeah, that was also stupid. Okay, this is way harder than
Ben, you suck at this. Mine was good.
I'm just not very creative.
Mine was good.
Yeah, yours was good. Well, do you think you'll have kids?
Maybe.
It's kind of contingent on the first one, so it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
To predict.
True. I would say if marriage works out, then yeah. I would say so. Little Theophilus.
Theophilus.
That's his name's gonna be Theophilus.
That'd be awesome.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just honestly giving my best guess. Might not be that way. We'll see. In 100 episodes, do we review all 3 Godfathers by then?
I think so.
Okay.
The only reason why we wouldn't, I think, is because we would just procrastinate on doing Godfather 3.
Do we review another Marvel movie in the next 100?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna go bold and say no.
No?
Of course, now I'll be fighting to keep that, but
What if Secret Wars comes out?
we probably will.
You already said
That's
your
the thing. I
answer.
said no. I'm holding with my no, but
Okay.
yes would be a fair answer.
I'm fine if we don't. Unless it's like the
Okay.
biggest movie ever.
In the next 100 episodes, will we interview a director with more than 10,000 followers on Instagram? Interview a director.
I'm going to go yes.
Yeah. I think we could do that. If we set that as a goal, we could definitely do that.
I'm going to say
Because
yes.
10,000 followers is not terribly.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be somebody who's terribly known. It'd just be like finding someone who we were genuinely like interested in interviewing.
Mm-hmm. In the next 100 episodes, do one of us get in a car accident?
I don't want to say yes, but it could happen. But fortunately, you should all go to Hedman Anglin Agency. Now
Right.
also you can go to Insurance Caddy with 2ds.com. Look for car insurance there, and you'll be set. So they've been with us almost the whole time. So Hedman Anglin Agency for your auto, home, and business needs.
Yep.
Do you think we can do the phone number off the dome?
614-486-7377. Wait.
I've already
614-486 7377. That's what I want to say. 7377.
That sounds right.
We
but let
should
me just-
probably
we should probably double check.
since we
that.
said it already, we should probably fix it just in case.
Yeah, we'll do that.
In 100 episodes, will you have a house?
614-486-7300.
00. I said 77.
777. I'm gonna say no, but
Ooh.
maybe close to being able to
Okay.
get one. I just am not confident in the housing market. Maybe if the housing market takes a downturn, yes.
Mm-hmm.
In 100 episodes, do you think we get either mentioned by Tim Dillon on
No.
some avenue
No.
or an interview with him?
Definitely not the latter.
Definitely not the latter.
Um,
I was more thinking that the only way that we could get mentioned is if we were like really annoying about trying to get an interview with him, and he was like, "I have these people," like he just like complains about it. I feel like he's one of those people where if you meet him, there's like a chance that you will be.
he
the
just
brunt-
tells his
a brunt
life
of a
stories.
joke. Yeah, but I don't think we're interesting enough for that to happen. Truthfully,
In the next 100 episodes, do you think one of us buys a car that's newer than 2018?
yes.
Wow. Bold.
I don't think it'll be you.
No, it won't be me. Bold. Okay.
In the next 100 episodes, do you think either Donald Trump or Joe Biden will be the president in the next election?
No.
Do you think that? No.
Since
You
I think
neither-
Colorado's Supreme Court already took him off the
I
ballot.
said both of them. So you think? So Biden. I don't know why I went both sides, but
That's a
I think
weird
there's a
question.
decent possibility Biden's still the president by the time.
I would say
100.
no.
You think he's still alive by the time? Is that
No.
a bad question?
No, I don't think so.
I don't mean. I mean that just because.
I think he's already been dead, and we've been doing Weekend at Bernie's this whole time.
You're right. It's definitely possible. You're right. I think with the Donald Trump thing, some people talk about it like it's like a sure thing. I don't see it happening.
Thing gonna what?
Like he's gonna like steamroll the Democratic Party, but I don't know.
What?
I feel like there's.
Why
too
are we
many-
still talking about it?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
That's what people talk about.
Okay, let's talk about something
It
else.
doesn't really matter to me.
What in the next, technically it would be 3 years for 100 episodes, and 100 episodes, do you think there's World War III?
No. I don't. Not in 3 years.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm so confident
Bold.
about that.
Bold. You're so bold today.
Do you think that AI will take a dramatic? You know when you have an enzyme, it's like a catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there'll be a catalyst for AI in the next 3 years?
I read this book called Superintelligence, and it's about how the different theories of how AI would take form and eventually gain power if it were to. And in each theory, there's an event that must occur that gives it an advantage over all other living things. And I say all other living things, not as if it is a living thing itself. And so I think it must happen that way.
So do you think that thing will happen in the next 3 years is kind of what I'm asking.
I'm going to say yes. Bold.
That is extremely bold. We'll have to revisit that one in 100 episodes.
When our producer is AI.
When we just make it's like AI versions of ourselves taking our thoughts. Like
that'd be nice.
We're not even saying them.
That'd be nice. Save us time.
It makes us funnier, and it smooths out like the sort of mistakes and stuff that you make when you're talking. Yeah, that would be super nice. That'd make our, but it would take them. I don't know. We'd have to be distracted by something else because then you wouldn't be doing any actual.
Do you
work.
think the sun dies?
No, I don't think it dies in 3 years. We're at 100 episodes. Of course, like up 100 episodes took a whole lifetime to do the next. Do you think we will go to the same like assisted living facility when we're like 85 and just bring our podcasting equipment with us?
Both of our wives are dead.
And both of our wives, we outlive both of our wives. I'm not saying I want that to happen.
It's just what happens.
Just in this
it's life, you know.
Yeah, it could happen that way.
It's life.
It could. And then
it's not like we're gonna arrange it.
What episode do you think we'd be on if we get that far?
Well, let's calculate. If we do 100 per 3 years, and that is, how old are we now? 21.
Yeah.
So we're adding 60 years, so that's 20 of those cycles.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming we go on around 81 or 82. Because we're about to turn 22 in the next few months.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So what is that? Wait.
You said 100 episodes per 3 years.
So 2,000?
Yeah, that'd be 2,000 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Joe Rogan's already at 2,077. He's been doing it for like 15 years. Yeah. So we'd be at a snail's pace compared to him, but we also started much younger. So
true. Yeah,
but you're right.
Maybe so we could do like episodes.
Think about how many movies we would cover.
2,000
movies. Yeah, every episode's a new movie. If we count the Logan Paul Floyd.
Oh yeah, sorry, 1,999. Well, actually, plus a couple double.
You'd be like,
features.
why'd you count that one as an episode?
I'll still be ranting about that. I'd be so mad. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably good. I don't really know what it'll look like. We don't know what the future will look like. We didn't think we'd end up here, did we?
No.
So.
No. Didn't know I would have a movie podcast. Didn't know that a lot of things.
Didn't know I'd have to say coitus.
Yep. And who knows what the future holds for the Movie Vault. Maybe we'll have our own studio one day. I was trying to write down all the different places we recorded. I think it's like 11 or 12.
Oh, really?
Over the course of time. Lots of different basements, different people's houses. Some people, when they're on the podcast, some people just letting us use the space, house sitting, all kinds of different places. Mm-hmm. So that's the beauty of it. We are sort of nomadic. But maybe one day we'll have our own space. And
once we're real adults and we have jobs.
We're real adults and have jobs and can afford it.
It's so funny we say that as if like the jobs won't get in the way in some fashion or form of the money.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that we'll have more expenses once we have real jobs. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you have a real job, but then you also have to pay for a lot more things. So like, do
also,
you actually have more money?
Here's your son, little Timmy.
Yep. And somebody needs to feed him.
I'm going to buy him Jordans.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun. All right. How do we want to close the vault for the 100th episode? I thought about this.
Should we start a new era of different ways to close things?
I think we should make a... Do you think we should make an actual sound, like an official sound?
And then use it from 101 for going on?
To 200?
Sure.
So this is our last, like... So you're saying we start at 101?
I don't know. I feel like that's... Why would we forego our signature?
You're right. It's not us. We're being inauthentic.
Yeah. I guess, yeah.
But I was also thinking about, I was like, what if we have to be like more professional one day? And then I just think about all the podcasts I've heard, and I'm like, nobody actually cares if you're professional.
True.
What does that even mean to be professional?
True.
Some of the most successful podcasts are like not professional at all.
Tim Dillon spent an hour ravaging about his aunt.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This is us.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Clink. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sure.